Chapter 23. The mother and son chatted and laughed as they returned home. Fu Yunruo went to bring out the lunch she had prepared. Wen followed behind and went over to help serve the dishes. Fu Yunruo skillfully gave him 2 pairs of chopsticks. When one was still young, so Fu Yunruo did not dare to give him anything that was too heavy or too hot. The mother and son placed the lunch on the dining table. When climbed onto the baby stool and saw the plate of meat on the table, he was so happy that he squinted his eyes. However, he was not in a hurry to eat. He first picked up 2 pieces of meat for Fu Yunruo before he started to eat. He ate with relish, and his eyes curved into beautiful crescents. Fu Yunruo saw that he was only eating meat and not vegetables, so she picked up some vegetables with her chopsticks and placed them in his exquisite and cute little bowl. Wen raised his head and looked at Fu Yunruo with a cute face. He said in a childish voice, "Mommy, I love you." Fu Yunruo tried hard to suppress the corners of her lips that wanted to curl up. She said with a straight face, "Mommy loves you too, but you still have to eat vegetables." Wen looked at her innocently with his black and bright eyes. He said coquettishly, "I love Mommy the most." As he said that, he put down his chopsticks and used his chubby little hand to make a little heart. Fu Yunruo almost did not keep a straight face. She looked at his chubby little body and her wavering position became firm again. "If you love me, then eat vegetables." This was too difficult. He was only a 4-year-old child. Why did he have to face such a dilemma? Wen glanced at his mother and acted coquettishly. "Mommy, I don't like to eat vegetables. In her previous life, there was no meat to eat in the orphanage. Occasionally, there would be minced meat, but that was during the new year. Wen had been hungry for a long time and had always been greedy for meat. Later on, when he had the means, he basically ate meat every day. If it were not for the fact that he did not gain weight easily, his manager would probably be angered to death by him every day. Therefore, he had never liked to eat vegetables. In fact, eating meat was also very good. Wen looked at her with his cute big eyes. Fu Yunruo she could not take it anymore. No. After Fu Yun swayed, she held her ground with difficulty. She was worried about Wen's height. Compared to children of the same age, she was actually half a head shorter. She did not meet the height standards of this age at all. She was extremely worried. She thought that the drugs in her body when she was pregnant with him had affected the child's genes. She used Uncle Gua's connections to bring the child to a private hospital owned by one of his students. After all the tests were done, the child's body was very healthy and there were no problems. The reason for the delayed growth was most likely due to their genes. Some children would indeed develop slower in the early stages. Adults did not need to worry too much about it. They just needed to be nourished as usual. 1. If you're picky about food, you won't grow tall. If you're picky about food, you won't be able to grow up to be an adult in the future. Fu Yun threatened. Wen kept saying that he was an adult. If Fu Yun knew that he wanted to grow up the most, she would use this sentence to scare him. Wen thought that this woman was becoming more and more childish. He was not a 3-year-old child. How could she deceive him? How could he not grow tall? In the past, when he was young, he did not eat meat for a year. Although he was shorter than his peers before he developed, after he started to develop, his height increased rapidly. Wen was not worried at all. He would grow to be a tall man who was 183 meters tall in the future. Now that he ate a lot of meat, he would definitely grow taller in the future. If you don't eat vegetables, you won't grow tall. Look at the second grandfather in the village. When he was young, he was picky about food. He only ate meat and did not eat vegetables. Look, he's not even as tall as me. Fu Yun said seriously. Her 168 meters height was not outstanding in the north. It was a very average height. However, in the south, girls were generally petite. This height was considered above average. Moreover, her body proportions were good, making her appear tall and leggy. Really? Wen thought of the second grandfather in the village and revealed a hesitant expression. The second grandfather was indeed not tall. He was only 150 meters. Of course. Fu Yun vowed solemnly. Have I ever lied to you? Wen thought seriously. Could it be that he grew so fast because he ate too much vegetables when he was young? Wen was not sure. If he ate less vegetables now and did not grow as tall as he did in his previous life, that would not be good. He did not want to be unable to reach 180 meters, so he quickly nodded. I'll eat. Fu Yun's lips curled up slightly. She thought proudly, little boy, your mother is still your mother. After lunch, the mother and son strolled in the courtyard. Wen followed behind Fu Yun with his short legs. Suddenly, his black eyes turned, and he ran up to hug Fu Yun's thigh. He looked up and said cutely in a small and cute voice, Mommy, I'm so obedient. Is there a reward? Fu Yun lowered her head and pinched his chubby and smooth little face. Wen, what reward do you want? Mommy, I want to eat braised meat. Fu Yun saw that he had eaten a lot of vegetables today, so she readily agreed. Okay. Wen immediately jumped in joy. Thank you, Mommy. I love Mommy the most. Moi, the little chubby hand touched his lips and then sent a flying kiss. Fu Yun did not know whether to laugh or cry. This little clever boy. Okay, it's time to take an afternoon nap. Okay, the mother and son happily went into the house and took a good afternoon nap together. After waking up, when one was called out by a group of children to play, Fu Yun tidied up the house and also went out. Since she wanted to make braised meat, she had to buy more than one type. She needed to buy some meat, such as pig trotters and pig head meat. Fu Yun went to the village entrance and told the uncle at the stall to leave some pig trotters and pig head meat for her in advance. Then, she went to Aunt May's house and told her that she would kill a chicken and a duck tomorrow and ask Uncle May to kill them. Fu Yun did not have time to raise poultry, so Aunt Tua May helped raise a few. The village was big, and every family raised a lot of poultry. It was not a big deal to have a few more. She gave some money as a reward for her hard work. Uncle May and Aunt May relied on the output of the fields all year round. Fu Yun used this opportunity to give them more money. They were not willing to accept it if she gave them money normally. Moreover, she did not know how to kill chickens, so she could only ask Uncle May for help. After Aunt May knew that she wanted braised meat, she agreed without hesitation. Early the next morning, the pork, chicken, and duck meat were all sent over. Fu Yun began to prepare the braised meat. The braised meat that she prepared under the aunt's guidance was preserved very well, and the taste was even more fragrant. When one had eaten the braised meat made by an aunt in the village last year, and she liked it very much, Fu Yun specially asked the aunt if she could learn from her, and then specially sent a chicken to ask for advice. Fu Yun learned a skill, and because it was not good for children to eat too much strong food, she made it lighter. Unexpectedly, the taste was also not bad. However, Fu Yun still tried to make as little as possible. Occasionally, she would make some for Wen to satisfy her cravings. Fu Yun agreed so readily this time, but it had been almost a month. Aunt May had also killed a chicken herself and braised it while she was at it. The old man liked this kind of food. After Fu Yun began to braise the meat, the entire courtyard was filled with the fragrance, and the children were so attracted that they could not move. They did not go out to play, and all of them were in the courtyard, drooling as they smelled the fragrant smell. Dunzi swallowed his saliva and said enviously, Wen, your mother is so amazing. She knows how to cook delicious food. It smells so good. Little Shirtu and the other children nodded in agreement, and their eyes were full of envy. Wen proudly stuck out his little belly and said, My mother is the best. He secretly swallowed his saliva. It smelled so good. After the first plate of braised meat was made, Fu Yun took it out and asked Wen to share it with the children. She knew that Wen would not eat alone, so she was not worried that he would eat too much. Sure enough, although Wen was drooling over the fragrant braised meat on the plate, he did not eat it himself. Instead, he looked at the children and tried to keep a straight face. Go wash your hands first. After you're clean, line up from the shortest to the tallest. One by one, each person gets a piece. The children obediently went to wash their hands. After they checked Wen one by one, they lined up from the shortest to the tallest, and Wen gave each person a piece. The children who received their share happily stood at the side and cherished it very much as they ate with relish. In the end, there was only one piece left. Wen raised his head to look at the teenager, Dali, and then lowered his head to look at the piece of meat on the plate. Dali saw this and stammered, How about, I don't eat it. Wen, you can eat it. Dali looked at it a few more times with great reluctance, and then resolutely looked away. Wenwen said, "Here you go. There's more in the kitchen." Dali thought about it and took the meat. "Then I'll eat it." Eat? Dali took the last piece of braised meat. Wenwen held the empty plate, turned his head, and ran into the kitchen with small steps. "Mom, I've finished sharing." Fu Yun looked at the empty plate and praised. "Wenwen is the best." Wenwen said aggrievedly, "I didn't get any." Fu Yun was puzzled. She had clearly calculated that each person would get a piece. Perhaps she had miscalculated, or another child had come without her knowledge. "It's okay. Mom has more here." As for why she did not suspect that when one was lying to eat an extra piece, Fu Yun thought that her son was so obedient and would not lie at all. Even if he wanted to eat more meat, he would only ask her for it. Fu Yun picked up a piece with her chopsticks. Wenwen opened his mouth wide and tried his best to tiptoe. He took the initiative to move closer. The fragrant braised meat entered his mouth. Wenwen's mouth was full of fragrance. His small mouth wriggled, and he narrowed his eyes happily. "Okay, go out and play with the children." Wenwen tried his best to raise his head to look at the stove. When he saw that there was so much braised meat, although he still wanted to eat more, there was no hurry. These were all his. Wenwen skipped out of the house in satisfaction. The children ate the meat and went to play happily. With Aunt May's help, Fu Yun finally finished braising all the meat. She looked at the braised food that looked and smelled good, and her heart was filled with a sense of accomplishment. At first, Fu Yun thought that her culinary skills were not good and that she was not suitable to be a food streamer. But now, she realized that she was quite talented. After Fu Yun discovered Wenwen's foodie nature, she put in a lot of effort to make delicious food for him. She went online to learn how to make food and learned from the aunties in the village who were good at cooking. Her culinary skills improved by leaps and bounds. Whether it was fish, meat, pastries, or desserts, she could make them all delicious. She felt that even if she did not broadcast Lonnie in the future, she could still be a food streamer. After Fu Yun left some for Uncle Gua and herself, she distributed the rest to the neighbors, especially Aunt May's family and the auntie who taught her how to prepare the braised food. Therefore, when Wenwen ran into the kitchen after playing enough, he saw that the kitchen was empty. He was instantly stunned. Where was his so much braised meat? Chapter 24. Wenwen, we're leaving. Fu Yun Rua's voice came from outside. Wenwen turned and ran out of the kitchen. Standing in front of the electric scooter, he looked around but did not see anything big. There was only a square item wrapped in a bag in the basket in front of him. He tried his best to smell the fragrance in the air, but unfortunately, the fragrance in the courtyard had not dissipated. He could not smell it. Wenwen looked up and asked Fu Yun Rua, "Mom, did you forget to bring something?" Fu Yun Rua looked at Wenwen and said strangely, "No, I've brought everything." Wenwen panicked. "Braised meat?" Fu Yun Rua pointed at the tightly wrapped bag in front of her. "Isn't that it?" When Wenwen heard this, he widened his eyes in disbelief. He had so much braised meat, but there was only so little. Fu Yun Rua glanced at Wenwen and knew what he was thinking. She said, "Mom gave it to someone. Your grandpa May likes to eat braised pig head meat with wine. Do you think we should give it to him? Grandma May taught your mom how to braise meat. Do you think we should give it to him?" Also, Fu Yun Rua pointed out everything. When Wenwen heard it, he felt that they should give it to him. In this way, he could only keep a little. Wenwen drooped his head. The days when he could eat braised meat to his heart's content had flown away just like that. This was not what he had imagined. Fu Yun Rua drove Wenwen back to the flower garden. Uncle Gua saw Wenwen's listless expression and immediately asked, "What's wrong with Wenwen? Was he bullied by a child?" Fu Yun Rua smiled and said, "Who would bully him? They're all protecting him. He's unhappy because he didn't eat enough braised meat." Uncle Gua's heart ached when he heard this. Wenwen, don't be sad. Grandpa Gua will buy braised meat for you to eat. Fu Yun Rua lifted the lunchbox. "I made some today, Uncle Gua. You don't have to buy it, and Wenwen can't eat too much." When it came to the child's health, Uncle Gua did not say anything. He quickly held Wenwen's hand and said, "Come, let's go and see how Xiao Lanchao is growing." When Wenwen heard this, she immediately perked up. "An orchid?" He had raised an orchid himself. Hence, when Wan and Uncle Gua went to the flower shed while Fu Yun went to the kitchen to start cooking, when Wen's small steps unconsciously quickened, she quickly ran to his small potted plant and squatted down to look at it. Seeing that the green seedling was in high spirits, he grinned happily. "You're so beautiful," Uncle Gua praised from the side. "Yeah, Wen is really amazing." When one was even happier, he looked proudly at Lan Miao, who had finally survived. He knew that his mother was so good at raising orchids. How could he not be able to raise them? Ever since when one learned how to run and jump, he was very sensible and wanted to help the adults. With his small body, he could not use the shovel and other tools that the adults used. He asked his mother to buy a set of small tools for him to dig the soil and plant flowers. But what he did not expect was that the flowers he planted would all die. His mother and Grandpa Gua did not take it to heart. They probably thought that it was already very impressive for a 2- or 3-year-old child not to destroy flowers. How could he know how to raise flowers? But when one felt guilty, he did not know what went wrong, so he decided to focus on raising a flower first. However, one of the orchids he raised died after a few days. No orchid had ever lived for more than 10 days in his hands. Uncle Gua saw that when one had destroyed so many orchids, but he was not angry. Children were very curious about new things and were keen to explore. When one was happy when he suddenly froze. He picked up the small leaves and looked at them strangely. He remembered that he had accidentally pulled off a small section of a leaf 2 days ago. These few leaves were not missing a section. He looked carefully. He was too happy just now and did not notice. Now, the more he looked, the more he felt that this was not the orchid he had raised before. When one raised his little face, "This is not my orchid, Uncle Gua was at a loss for words. Then, he said with certainty, "How can it not be? This is your little orchid." "But one of the leaves has a mark. This one doesn't." When one retorted, Uncle Gua was stunned. "What mark?" When he saw it, the leaves had already turned yellow. He did not notice it. "My orchid is dead," one said with certainty. He observed Uncle Gua's expression and came to an answer. Uncle Gua could not find any words to refute, so he said carefully, "It's Grandpa Gua's fault. You asked me to take care of the orchid so seriously, but I raised it to death." Uncle Gua took the responsibility himself. In fact, 2 days ago, when Wen's baby solemnly entrusted him to take care of his orchid, he knew at a glance that the orchid would not survive. He tried to save it for 2 days, but in the end, it withered. Uncle Gua was at a loss. Thinking that when Wan was coming back, he quickly found a similar orchid seedling to replace it. He did not expect that when Wan would see through him in the end. Uncle Gua coaxed Wan, "It's okay. Let's continue to raise it with this one. Look at how strong this seedling is. It will definitely survive." When Wan was shocked again and again, he was in a bad mood. He could not help but doubt himself. Was he poisonous? Otherwise, why would one orchid die after another? Clearly, his mother could raise so many beautiful orchids. He also had a professional like Uncle Gua by his side. He was influenced by him. Shouldn't he be lying down at the end of his life? When one said listlessly, "There's no need. I'd better not spoil Hua Hua. Hua was so cute. It would be heartbreaking if it died under his care." Uncle Gua's heart instantly ached. How can it be spoiling Hua Hua? When one took care of Hua Hua so seriously, this was all an accident. Next time, you will definitely be able to raise beautiful flowers. No matter how Uncle Gua comforted him, Wen's expression was still listless. When he saw the plate of fragrant braised meat on the table for dinner, his eyes immediately lit up. At the dining table, after Wen ate the stipulated 3 pieces of meat, he said seriously to Fu Yun, "Mother, the Hua Hua I raised died. My young heart has been seriously hurt. Can I eat 3 more pieces of meat to comfort my injured heart?" Fu Yunrua paid special attention to food and drink. Everything that children could not eat was strictly controlled. Those that could not be eaten more, such as braised meat, were limited to a certain amount at a time. Although when one was greedy, he enjoyed his mother's concern more. He was keen on fighting a battle of wits and courage just to eat more meat. Fu Yun looked at her son's serious little face. This little guy was simply too desperate for a mouthful of meat. Fu Yun relented and said, "You can eat 1 more piece." But if you eat these vegetables, you can eat one more piece. Fu Yun was like most mothers now. She had the same worries. Children were picky eaters. They only ate meat and did not like vegetables. They were unwilling to go to kindergarten. They played like mud monkeys rolling in the mud every day. However, when the child looked at you with pure and innocent eyes, took the initiative to kiss you, rubbed your face, and said softly, "I love mother the most," you could not be angry at all. Fu Yun could not figure it out. How cute, obedient, and considerate were they when they were just born? She was often worried that the child would be bullied because he was too quiet when he grew up. Now that she thought about it, she was really naive at that time. It was said that men changed 18 times when they grew up. He was not even old yet, but he had changed so much. Fortunately, she could control this mischievous child. When Wenwen heard Fu Yun's words, she immediately smiled and said, "Deal." Uncle Gua was very happy at the sight. He ate the pig head meat that tasted better the more he chewed. Seeing that when Wen's food was restricted, he felt that it tasted even better. Fu Yun noticed that Uncle Gua frequently picked up the meat and also reminded him, "Uncle Gua, it's not easy to digest meat if you eat too much at night. Eat less." Now that the weather was hot, even if there was a refrigerator, it was not good to keep the meat for too long. Fu Yun did not keep much meat. At most, she could eat 2 meals. She would cook every once in a while. Every time, the old and young did not stop eating, and she had to watch over them. Uncle Gua. Wenwen snickered at Uncle Gua. Wenwen ate 2 more pieces of meat and was happy for the entire night. However, the next day, when he saw the pots of lively orchids and thought of his unfortunately dead orchids, his mood instantly turned bad. He squatted on the ground and held his chubby little face as he sighed sadly. It was too difficult for him. He did not know if his mother would let him eat 2 more pieces of meat to comfort him. Wenwen slurped his saliva as if he had not had enough. When he thought of the little meat left, he became even more worried. He had so much meat, but there was only a little left. At this moment, Fu Yun was live streaming, and many of the bullet screen comments asked about her child. Fu Yun Ruo shared his interesting story with the audience, causing them to burst into laughter. "My child is really too cute. My heart aches for my child, but I can't help it. Ha ha ha. My child is really a big treasure." The audience loved to hear about the old and the young. Fu Yun also loved to share with the audience. She wanted the whole world to know about her clever, cute, obedient, and sensible, smart son. The number of viewers who firmly occupied the number 1 spot on the fan list smashed the sea of flowers again. Fu Yun was used to it and skillfully thanked them. In the past few years, she finally understood that this mysterious nouveau riche was really rich. Every time he appeared, he would definitely smash a sea of flowers. Under Fu Yun's repeated attempts to stop him, he finally restrained himself a little. At most, he would smash 10 flowers at a time. In the eyes of this nouveau riche, 1 million yuan was probably like 100 yuan. He would casually throw it out when he loosened his grip. Fu Yun thought about the unscientific nature of this world. There were many explosive news on the internet about a certain rich 2nd or 3rd generation spending tens of millions just to chase after celebrities. In the live streaming industry, she was not the first person to be rewarded with 1 million yuan. She was making a fuss over nothing. In the living room of a simple but luxurious villa, a tall man was lying lazily on the sofa. He crossed his slender and straight legs, and his ankles protruded from the edge of the sofa. The tips of his toes were occasionally raised. Siyu leaned against the soft pillow and looked at the phone screen horizontally in his hand. The host's pleasant voice was like jade beads falling on a plate. It was very comfortable to listen to. He did not think that he was a voice fetishist, but this voice was not pretentious. It was pleasant to listen to, and it was much more comfortable than those who pretended to be weak and coquettish. When he heard the host say that the flowers raised by the old and young had died again, Siyu felt the same way. He had a better impression of the chubby little boy who appeared on the host's homepage from time to time. He could not help but love the only human child who had mixed in with the group of orchid brothers. He could not raise the flowers alive either. This little boy was just like him. Hence, he started to tip him. After watching the live stream, he clicked on the host's homepage and flipped to the hottest video. On the screen, A leaf orchid emerged from the soil and grew, blooming with fresh flowers. This was the thin leaf orchid of the leaf orchid. The flowers were pure white, and the stamens were light yellow-green. It was simple but elegant. Siyu watched it over and over again. At this moment, a plump middle-aged man walked in quickly. His forehead was covered in sweat. Yuan Xian wiped the sweat off his forehead. Siyu. HM? Siyu and Siyu responded lazily and teased. Why is Yuan Gu so free to come here? Yuan Xian was relieved to see that Siyu was still in the mood to joke around. He discreetly observed Siyu's condition, afraid that something was wrong. I accepted a variety show for you. Upon hearing this, Siyu raised his eyebrows. Great manager, Yuan. Are you trying to exploit the masses of poor people? Yuan Xian rolled his eyes unceremoniously. How would I dare to exploit the great best actor C? You're the one who's exploiting me. Siyu had accepted a drama last year to compete for this year's Triennial International Awards. It was a drama about the many sides of human nature. It took almost a year to film this drama, and every scene was strived to be as realistic as possible. As one of the male leads, Siyu acted as a person with an extremely dark and negative heart. In the end, he lost his life because he tried to show some kindness. The other male lead was a veteran best actor, and his acting skills were superb. The two best actors acted together on the same stage. Yuan Xian was stunned by Siyu's explosive acting skills, especially when they stopped filming. Yuan Xian looked at Siyu, who seemed to still be in the dark and gloomy mood, and felt worried. At the end of the scene, the unreadable look in Siyu's eyes was even more heartbreaking. It had been 10 days since the filming of the drama ended. Siyu had been staying at home to adjust his state of mind. Yuan Xian came over every 2 to 3 days, afraid that Siyu would be too immersed in the role and not be able to get out of it. This time, he came with a mission. This was the first time he had accepted an invitation to a variety show without Siyu's approval. This show is relaxing. It's a good chance to relax. Yuan Xian explained the content of the show to him. Siyu gave Yuan Xian a sideways glance, but did not say anything. Yuan Xian tried his best, but Siyu still did not say anything. Yuan Xian had no choice but to use his trump card. The location of the show is Qi Weiqing's teacher's hometown. You can pay him a visit. Siyu's eyes lit up when he heard this, but he still said reservedly, I'm a flower owner now. He had not seen little 11 for a while, but she was already a budding flower. It would not be long before she would bloom even prettier than little 5. Yuan Xian was speechless. To be honest, he did not understand the mentality of a flower owner. What was there to be proud of? It was not like he had personally raised her. However, he knew better than to say this out loud. It's fine if you don't go. Qi Weiqing wanted to ask you to pay his teacher a visit, but I rejected him. Yuan Xian was about to leave. Siyu said, since your big manager has agreed, how can I not go? Yuan Xian sneered in his heart when he heard this. He spoke as if he could order him to do anything. What a damn man. If this was not the big boss of his boss, he would not have served him. Chapter 25. When Juan was shoveling mud with a small shovel, his fair face was stained with mud, but he didn't notice it. With the encouragement of his mother and Grandpa Gua, he regained his confidence and decided to continue planting orchids. He felt that it might be because the environment was not right. He shouldn't have planted it in a flower pot. He should have planted it in the garden. Maybe the orchids he was raising didn't want to be canaries and yearned for the free and vast sky outside. When huffed and puffed, he finally planted the flower seedlings. He followed the instructions given by Grandpa Gua and his mother seriously. Then, he watched over it from morning till night. On the first day, it was green and looked very energetic. He was happy. On the second day, it was a little wilted. Maybe it hadn't adapted to the new environment yet. On the third day, the leaves were a little yellow. When one was anxious, was it wilting again? On the fourth day, the flower died. When one squatted in the corner, deep in thought. His chubby face was solemn, and he was deep in thought. Why didn't he realize that he had such a physique in his previous life? Maybe it was because he was busy surviving and didn't grow flowers, so he didn't realize it? But this shouldn't be. His mother became a professional and outstanding artist in Lanzhou in just 2 to 3 years. Even Grandpa Gua was very satisfied with his mother. He once praised her in front of him that his mother was the most talented person he had ever seen. Genes could be passed down in reverse? Fu Yun looked at Wen, who seemed to have suffered a huge blow, and she was speechless. She didn't know what to say to comfort him. This time, in order to let Wen successfully grow the orchids, she and Uncle Gua watched from the side. Their operation was clearly correct. Logically speaking, as long as it wasn't too delicate, it should be easy to grow. But why did it just wilt? Could it be that there were really people who were plant insulators? Among her fans, a small number of them seemed to be such people. They said that they couldn't even grow a plant. She thought that it was an exaggeration. Now, she felt that perhaps there really was such a plant killer. Fuyan finally said, "Baby, are we going back to the village in the afternoon?" When Wen heard that, he immediately stood up and ran over with his short legs. "Going back? Isn't that tomorrow?" Fu Yun Ruo patted his little head. "When we go back today, do you miss the children very much?" "No." Wen shook her head and said reservedly, "Just a little. Go and say goodbye to Grandpa. You haven't seen him for 2 days. Now, go and accompany him." "Okay." Wen skipped to the flower shed. Fu Yun looked at Wen's lively and cheerful back view. His attention was diverted, and he instantly forgot about the orchid grass. If Fu Yun thought about it, children should like to play with adults and children. Should she consider letting him go to kindergarten? Previously, she felt that 3 years old was too young and was not old enough to go to kindergarten. She would consider it again next year. Now that she thought about it, she could send him to kindergarten this September. She didn't know what kind of proof was needed to enroll in kindergarten. Did she need to register her baby? Her baby hadn't registered yet. In the afternoon, Fu Yun and Wen took an afternoon nap before returning to the village. When the children in the village saw Wen return, they were so excited that they jumped around. The little guy was obviously very happy as well. His eyes lit up, and he happily went to play with the children. Fu Yun Ruo went to look for Uncle May and Aunt May. When she saw that only Aunt May was at home, she asked, "Where's Uncle May?" Fu Yun Ruo came back early with the child. It was only 3 o'clock. "He went to town for a meeting," Aunt May said casually. Uncle May was the village chief and could be considered a grassroots cadre. If there were any instructions from the higher-ups, he would also summon the village chiefs for a meeting. Fu Yun Ruo nodded. "Why are you looking for your uncle?" "I want to ask Uncle May. When one doesn't have a household registration, if he wants to go to kindergarten, what proof does he need?" "I know about this. Just ask me," Aunt May said. "We're not that strict here. He can go to kindergarten without a household registration." Fu Yun Ruo was relieved when she heard that. "That's good." Aunt May couldn't help but say, Ruo, the child's household registration problem has to be solved sooner or later. Even if it doesn't affect his kindergarten, it will affect his primary school and university." "I know." However, Fu Yun Ruo didn't know what to do. Her own household registration was still with the Fu family, so she couldn't register the child with her own household registration. "Are you going to continue like this?" Aunt May said lovingly. "Young people nowadays all yearn for the big cities outside. They don't want to stay in the mountains for the rest of their lives and live their lives in a daze. You're still young. One day, you'll fly to the outside world." I know you're a good child. You're a phoenix in distress. Our mountain can't keep you." Aunt May saw through it. "We all hope that you can face it bravely. Don't be defeated by the wind and rain. If you're tired, this is your last harbor." Fu Yun Ruo almost cried when she heard that. Although Aunt May didn't ask anything, she knew everything in her heart. She was really lucky to have met Aunt May's family and Uncle Gua. The education resources in the big cities outside are much better than in the mountains, Aunt May said earnestly. "So, for your own sake and for Wen's future, you should make plans early." Fu Yun Ruo nodded and said solemnly, "I'll consider it carefully." She had considered this problem in the past. She knew that even if it was for the sake of her child, she would leave this place and return to the big city one day. After her death 2 years ago, Fu Yun Ruo still thought about whether she should go out. However, at that time, her career had just started. On one hand, she couldn't bear to let go of her career. On the other hand, she couldn't bear to leave this place. She had a sense of belonging to this place. She had someone she couldn't bear to part with. Furthermore, the baby was still young. It wasn't time for her to make a choice yet, so she had always refused to think about this difficult choice. To her, Uncle Gua was undoubtedly the person who gave her a second life. The knowledge he taught her completely changed the trajectory of her life. He had no children, so she was most worried about him. Even if he had nephews and grandnephews here, if possible, Fu Yunruo wanted to do her best. Even if she had to go out, she wanted Uncle Gua to go with them. She just didn't know if Uncle Gua was willing. She couldn't bear to part with Uncle Mei and Aunt Mei. They had their son to take care of them. Fu Yunruo knew that they wouldn't leave their hometown. "It's good that you don't mind me talking too much," Fu Yunruo said coquettishly. "I know Aunt Mei is doing this for my own good." This topic was too heavy, so they quickly changed the topic. Didn't the city summon the county leaders for a meeting previously? It seems that some television station is coming to our small place to film some program. I haven't heard of it, Fu Yunruo thought to herself. It was such a new thing, but she didn't seem to have heard anyone discussing it. It's not like they're coming to our place. I heard that there's some confidentiality agreement. They can't talk about it everywhere. As the county next to them had snatched this spot, it was very far away from them. Moreover, the television station had requested that it couldn't be revealed for the time being, so there was basically no gossip here. Then now? Why did they call Uncle Mei for a meeting again? Fu Yunruo keenly caught the main point. Who knows? The old man has gone to several meetings because of this matter these few days. Aunt Mei wasn't too sure about the situation at the moment. When she asked the old man, he was very mysterious. She didn't know what he was up to. Fu Yunruo was also quite curious, but Uncle Mei hadn't returned yet. She sat for a while more before going back to cook dinner. At night, Fu Yunruo brought her son to the Mei family. Before Mei, the weather had already begun to warm up. It was as if they had just woken up and stepped into summer. It was still cold at night. The children were all wearing long sleeves and running around the village. As when one had to accompany Grandpa Mei and Grandma Mei, he didn't run around with his friends. Fu Yunruo was also worried. If he ran into a dark place and accidentally bumped into something, her heart would ache. The children ran around Fu Yunruo and her son, laughing and laughing. It wasn't until they entered the Mei family's house that the children laughed and dispersed. Uncle Mei and Aunt Mei were very happy that the mother and son had arrived. They hurriedly invited them to sit down and brought them food. Uncle Mei and his wife asked about Wenwen's well-being for a while before they talked about the topic they had talked about during the day. This spot has been given to our county. Uncle Mei's tone was very happy. Aunt Mei said strangely, "What? This spot can still be changed?" Uncle Mei took a sip of tea and kept them in suspense before he said leisurely, "I heard that this spot was given to that side because the leader there used his connections. However, it was said that when the television station came to inspect, the leader's brother-in-law also accompanied them. He drank too much during the meal and offended the television station." Uncle Mei's tone was subtle. He never expected that such a good thing would happen to them in such a way. When Fu Yunruo heard Uncle Mei's words, she couldn't help but think, which television station and which program was it? She tried to recall the plot of the book she had read before. If the name of her former hometown appeared, she would definitely have a deep impression of it. On second thought, this was the end of the story in the book. In the first book, not long after the original owner died, Fu Yun's father received the news and was unable to hold on. He was bedridden. The female lead rejected the male lead's marriage proposal again and again because of this. Later, Fu Yun's father was bedridden for more than 2 years and unfortunately passed away. Fang Shuiruo and her mother struggled to support the Fu family. Half a year later, an accident happened, and Fang Shuiruo had no choice but to get married. After that, it ended with a wedding of the century. The second book started when her daughter was 18 years old. The years in the middle were not within the scope of the book's plot. Fu Yunruo had checked and found that because her ending changed, the trajectories of other people also changed. Fu Yun's father did not show any signs of being seriously ill. From time to time, he would appear in public in high spirits. At this point in time, there was no description of Fang Shuiruo participating in any variety show. Therefore, this should be a program that was not popular. Fu Yunruo did not take this matter to heart. When one sat on Fu Yunruo's lap and swung her little legs from time to time. When she heard that the television station was going to film a program here, she immediately pricked up her ears and listened carefully. "Which television station is it?" When one looked up and asked. Uncle May immediately said, "Star TV station." When one was deep in thought. Star TV station had already declined when he was in the entertainment industry. At this time, it should still be considered a little famous. When Won and Fu Yun Ruo were the same. They did not take it to heart, so they were also curious about which celebrities would be there. Anyway, even if he wanted to enter the entertainment industry in the future, it would be many years later. He was still a child now, so he had to enjoy the rights of a child. When Aunt May heard Uncle May's words, she immediately patted her thigh happily. "Then, won't we be able to see a big star?" "Io, can we see Fong Er?" Fong Er was the female lead of the most famous TV drama when they were young. She was still an active actress on the screen, but she usually played the role of a mother or grandmother. People of their age still like to call her by the name of Fong Er in the role. Maybe. Uncle May was not too sure. "Io, I didn't expect that at my age, I could still learn to be fashionable. This is called chasing after celebrities, right?" Aunt May smiled like a flower. "Don't be happy too early," Uncle May said. "There are so many towns in the county. They might not necessarily come to our place. It's not far to go to the other towns." Aunt May did not care at all. "When the time comes, us old sisters will charter a car and go there directly. It won't take long." "You old woman." Uncle May did not say anything in the end. In fact, he also wanted to take a look. Fong Er was not only the idol of these women when they were young, but also the idol of these men when they were young. However, he could not say it out loud. Otherwise, the old woman would definitely say that he was ugly and mischievous. How could he covet the goddess? Fu Yun Ruo looked at Uncle May and Aunt May and thought that they were really cute fans. Looking at the way the two of them interacted, she was envious in her heart. She did not know if she would be able to meet such a person who would accompany her for the rest of her life. Chapter 26. Fu Yun didn't livestream when she lived in the village. She had maintained this habit since half a year ago. Of course, because the two places were close, she would sometimes finish her livestream in the morning and go back after lunch. She wasn't idle in the village either. Sometimes, she would tidy up the yard a little and connect with the neighbors. It was said that distant relatives were not as good as close neighbors. Neighbors also had to interact frequently with each other so that their relationship wouldn't fade. Other than that, she had to deal with a lot of work matters. Now that Fu Yun's fame was at its peak, the platform arranged an assistant for Fu Yun after she became an A-lister. With her popularity, there were more things that came with it. Although the platform had a specialized department to help maintain it, Chi Weiqing suggested that she open a studio under the Panda platform. Some people's encounters were just different. If they were destined to be popular, they would be like fish in water no matter where they went. Chi Weiqing thought that she would become popular, but he didn't expect that she would achieve so much through live streaming. To be honest, it was much harder to stand out in the live streaming industry than in the entertainment industry. The number of people who could be considered A-listers in the live streaming industry could be counted with two hands. There were only a few people who were truly A-listers. In the entertainment industry, it was very common for a top celebrity to appear in 1 or 2 years. As for whether they could stabilize their position after they went up, at least 9 out of 10 of them would eventually fall, while one would barely maintain their A-lister position. Not everyone was like CU. In the past 10 years, only CU was an A-lister. After a movie became a top celebrity, not only did he not fall, but he also rose higher and higher. Others could only look up to him. At this time, it didn't matter if Fu Yun was in the entertainment industry or not. Chi Weiqing had already dispelled this idea. He suggested that Fu Yun set up her own studio. This would be beneficial for her future career development. This live stream was also very positive. Fu Yun also became the successor of the Orchid Arts Association. People who didn't understand this industry might not know. Tracing back, the discovery and maintenance of orchids predated the birth of writing. In later historical development, orchids became a symbol of literati and a symbol of spirituality. Even now, they were still sought after. The history of orchids could be said to have run through human history. In recent times, due to the extensive destruction of orchids, which almost led to their extinction. The country listed wild orchids in the protection law. Although Lonnie was a relatively unpopular knowledge nowadays, if one had the luck, it would be impossible for it not to become popular. It was like one of the pillars of a live broadcast. It was a food broadcast. Every time it was broadcasted, there would be millions of people watching it online. Fu Yun was also considering the matter of the studio. After she became famous, there were more things to do. She needed a professional team to help her deal with her work. Qi Weiqing had given her a lot of useful suggestions. If Fu Yun had accepted all of them, she would have definitely invited Qi Weiqing to her studio if it wasn't for the fact that Qi Weiqing had no intention of changing jobs. Fortunately, Tian, the assistant that the platform had arranged for her in the livestream room, was very capable. Over the past few years, she had helped her manage the livestream room in an orderly manner. Their temperaments were also compatible, so she did not need to find someone else to manage it. Fu Yunruo and Tian finalized the regulations of the studio before ending the video call. A year ago, Tian had specially come to meet her during the holidays. After meeting each other, they had a good impression of each other. Their worldviews were also compatible, so they were now good friends and often video called each other. Fu Yunruo turned off her computer, stretched, stood up, and walked out. She did not know where the little guy had run off to play. Fu Yunruo looked around and then went to Aunt May's house. Aunt May's house was currently bustling with noise and excitement. A group of women were sitting there and chatting. When they saw Fu Yunruo, they hurriedly waved for her to come over. Fu Yunruo smiled and said, "Aunties, what are you talking about? Why is it so lively?" "We're talking about the TV station. Yes, our town is also within their filming range. I heard that they'll even come to our village." "Sigh, I don't know if those big celebrities are as good-looking as our Ruarua." "Definitely not. I've never seen a girl more beautiful than Ruarua on TV." These words caused a wave of agreement. Fu Yunruo waved her hand. "How can I compare to a celebrity?" She felt that their filter was too thick and then asked, "Will our village be coming too?" "Yes. The news has spread in the town. I heard that the TV station will donate to the local. No wonder so many people are fighting over it. Then won't we be able to get a share of the money?" "No way. It's for charity." Fu Yunruo listened to their discussion and heard the word donation. Her heart skipped a beat. Back then, after she had earned a certain amount of savings, she had also suggested to Aunt May to donate some money to do something for the village. However, Aunt May had rejected her suggestion. Although most of the people in the village were simple and honest, if they knew that you had a lot of money in your hands, it was inevitable that they would be jealous. They were orphans and widows, so it was even easier for them to be targeted. It was fine to do good deeds, but they could not put themselves in danger because of doing good deeds. It was difficult to hide secrets in a small place. Fu Yunruo's donation would undoubtedly tell others that she had a huge sum of money on her. Moreover, the location of this village was not good. Even if they built a road, a few million would only be able to build a section of the road. It was a big project to build all the roads that connected all the villages to the town and outside. Fu Yunruo did not have the funds to support this project. Fu Yunruo dismissed the idea at that time. Now that she thought about it, she might be able to donate in the name of the production team. This way, Aunt May and Uncle May would not have any worries. Aunt May said to Fu Yunruo, "Ruarua, our village still has a meeting at 7 p.m. It's on the ground at the entrance of the village. Remember to come then." Fu Yunruo nodded. "Okay. What meeting was there at night?" Fu Yunruo was quite curious. While the adults were chatting, the children were playing in the village. Their childish laughter spread far and wide in the village. Just as they were playing happily, a thin and small child walked over while crying. Behind him was an old man with a helpless expression. When one saw her little brother crying, she immediately stopped in her tracks and walked over. She said sternly, "Zhuang, why are you crying?" Then, she looked at Zhuang's grandmother suspiciously. Could it be that she had hit Zhuang? Zhuang's grandmother said helplessly, "He was just robbed of a candy. He has been crying until now and insisted on coming to look for you." Zhuang said aggrievedly, "I specially brought that candy back for Wen." As he spoke, he opened his mouth and was about to continue crying. "All right, don't cry," Wen said with a frown. Zhuang's crying immediately subsided. When Zhuang's grandmother saw this, she said kindly, "Then I'll leave Zhuang to you." Then, she left with a peace of mind. Zhuang was still sobbing. It took Wen a while to clarify what had happened. It turned out that Zhuang had gone to town with his grandmother today. His grandmother had bought 2 candies for him. He thought that they were very delicious and specially kept one to bring back for Wen to eat. However, on the way, it was snatched by a little tyrant from the neighboring village. He was very tall and strong. Zhuang did not dare to snatch it back and cried all the way back. When Wen heard this, he was furious. He said domineeringly, "Just you wait. I'll get back at him for you." How could he sit back and do nothing when his little brother was being bullied? Zhuang immediately stopped crying. He looked at Wen with stars in his eyes. At this moment, he felt that Wen's image was extremely great in his eyes. "Are we going to fight?" Li, who had been paying attention to the commotion here, rubbed his palms together when he heard Wen's words. When children played, it was usually the children of the same village who played by themselves. They minded their own business with the children of other villages. Sometimes, they would even fight to occupy the place to play. Of course, most of them would play together. After all, most of their peers who were already in school were in the same class. Therefore, the children knew each other, whether directly or indirectly. Wen said, "How can they be so violent? They were good children. How could they fight? Then, how are we going to get back at them? We have to be polite before resorting to force." Wen's expression was serious. "First, we have to talk to them with emotion and then reason." The others were dumbfounded. They did not understand, but they felt that Wen knew a lot. "Let's write a letter of challenge first and arrange a time to meet. We'll reason with them first. If they compensate us with the candy and apologize to Zhuang, this matter will be over. If they don't agree, then we'll fight," Wen said domineeringly. The other children nodded continuously. They understood. They were waiting for them to return the candy before fighting. Wen was amazing. In the past, when they fought, they would fight as soon as they met. Why would they care about being polite before resorting to force? Thinking back to the past, when they were robbed by the children of the neighboring villages, it would be best if they could get their things back. If they could not, they would only fight so that the other children would not dare to rob them again in the future. Who would have thought that they would have to compensate first? Li volunteered to write a letter of challenge. He was the oldest in the group of children. He was in the 6th grade of primary school and was the most literate among the children. Li wrote a letter of challenge and handed it to Wen for review. The words on the letter of challenge were written crookedly. Some words that he did not know were written in pinyin. However, it was still a qualified letter of challenge. They sent a vanguard to deliver the letter of challenge and then arrived at the appointed location at the appointed time. When looked around at the number of people on her side, the girls had all rushed back and were not allowed to participate. The main fighting force was the children between the ages of 8 and 10. Not long after, the other side brought more than 10 children. At first glance, the fighting strength of the two sides was about the same. The only biggest difference was the boss that they were escorting. The two armies confronted each other and were clearly separated. On their side, there was a white, short, and chubby child. On the other side, there was a strong, big child who was 1.6 meters tall. "Are you the one who bullied my Zhuang?" Wen tried hard to put her hands on her chubby waist. Although she lost in terms of size, she did not lose in terms of aura. "As long as you apologize to my Zhuang and compensate us with the candy, we will let bygones be bygones." Big Mountain did not understand the meaning of the last 4 words. However, he did snatch candy. Today, he did snatch candy from a little kid. Big Mountain was the leader of the children in the neighboring village. He was a 12-year-old child and had inherited the position of the previous boss after he graduated from junior high school. He lowered his head and looked at the little kid who did not have any power at all. He was short, small, and cute. She glared at him with her big, round eyes. She looked so cute and fierce. He only felt his heart beating rapidly. Using an idiom to express it, it was a blow to the heart. What an exquisite doll. "Are you the boss of the neighboring village?" This was the boss who had issued a challenge to him. Wen proudly stuck out her little belly. "Yes, that's me." Big Mountain looked at the beautiful little kid not far away, and then looked down at his little brother who was of the same height. There was still snot under his nose and dirty chubby hands. After a moment, he lowered his head and lifted the chubby boy by his clothes. He walked to Wen and placed the chubby boy in front of Wen. Wen? Question mark. Did he feel that it was embarrassing for him to bully the young? Was that why he brought a kid of the same height over to duel with him? The next moment, Big Mountain lifted Wen up and carried him by the waist. He turned around and walked away. Let's exchange. This little kid is yours, and I want your boss. Wen, who was being held by the waist with his face down and back up, was confused. All the children. One face was confused. Two faces were confused. Three faces were confused. When the children saw that their baby Wen had been kidnapped by the enemy from the neighboring village, they were so angry that they immediately chased after him. Give Wen back. Put Wen down. Big Mountain ran quickly in front with Wen in his arms. He thought to himself, this is the little brother I want. I have to hide him at home as soon as possible. When the children saw that their boss had snatched the other party's little boss and ran away, they also ran with him in confusion. On the other side, the children whose baby Wen had been snatched away screamed and chased after him, wanting to snatch their Wen back. The exchange item, Big Mountain's little brother, Xiaoshan, was left behind. He looked at the group of people running away, leaving him alone with a confused expression. After a moment, there was an earth-shattering cry. Chapter 27. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This child is too inconsiderate. In the farmhouse's courtyard, a sturdy woman brought a tall and strong child over and apologized profusely to the charming young woman opposite her. As she spoke, the woman slapped the back of Dashan's head. Hurry up and apologize to your Auntie Ro. Fu Yun's heart clenched when she heard the slap. She hurriedly said, It's okay. It's okay. The child is just playing around. It's a misunderstanding. I'm sorry, Sister Ruoruo. Dashan touched the back of his head and then grinned. Sister, I'll give my younger brother to you. Can you give Wen to my family as my younger brother? Fu Yun, what nonsense are you spouting? The fat woman slapped him again. Also, call me Auntie. Sister is so pretty. That's how you are. You brat. The slap on his shoulder made a loud thud. Fu Yun almost couldn't help but stop him. Dashan was used to it. He pursed his lips and looked at the gentle and beautiful sister. He said casually, Mom, can you give me to Sister Ruoro to be your son? Anyway, he wanted a beautiful younger brother. The one at home was dirty all day and loved to cry. How could he be as cute as Wen? I think you're asking for a beating. The woman was sure that Fu Yun didn't care about Dashan's rudeness. She pulled her eldest son's ear and scolded him as she left. Fu Yun sent the mother and son away. When she returned to the house, she saw Wen squatting in the corner. Wen was a small and round ball squatting in the corner. Hold it in. I can't laugh. Fu Yun covered the corners of her mouth and walked over. All right, Wen, don't be unhappy. Brother Dashan has apologized to Wen. Wen will forgive Brother Dashan, right? Fu Yun walked to the fat ball and squatted beside him. Then she hugged him. Our Wen is the best. Wen fell into a depressed mood. He buried himself in Fu Yun's arms and twisted his small body awkwardly. He looked as if he was too ashamed to face anyone. It was too embarrassing. He was the big boss, but his position was snatched away by his opponent. How could he raise his head in front of his younger brother in the future? Fu Yun looked at Wen's awkward look and thought of the whole story. She could not help but burst out laughing. Wen immediately looked up at her, her eyes full of condemnation. Poof. I'm sorry, baby. Mommy didn't mean it. Wen complained angrily, How could you hurt my young heart? He was already hurt enough, but his mother still laughed at him. Fu Yun Ruo quickly pulled a straight face and admitted her mistake sincerely. It's Mommy's fault. Mommy shouldn't have laughed. Baby, can you forgive Mommy? Humph. Wen snorted loudly. After being coaxed for a while, she reluctantly expressed her forgiveness. Fu Yun Ruo looked at Wen's proud expression and almost could not help but laugh again. Fu Yun Ruo did not expect things to develop so dramatically at first. She was chatting with Aunt May and the neighbors when a few children ran over crying and said intermittently that one had been snatched away. At that time, she thought that he had been snatched away by human traffickers. She suddenly felt dizzy and almost fainted. One gradually grew up and could not lack playmates of the same age. The flower bed was relatively remote. Fu Yun Ruo was not familiar with the people in the village next to the flower bed. When she stayed there, she basically did not go out and stayed in the flower bed. And the flower bed could not easily let outsiders in, especially children who were at the age of mischievous. Do not underestimate the destructive power of children. They were young and curious. Wherever they went, not even a blade of grass would grow. Therefore, every weekend, Fu Yun Ruo would bring Wen back to the village to stay for 1 or 2 nights. Fu Yun Ruo was very assured that Wen would run around the village with a group of children. As a semi-enclosed village where everyone knew exactly how many chickens the owner raised and how many ducks the owner raised, even an outsider would be able to discover it. The furry children running around the village were all related to each other. When the adults saw them, they would look at them together. The children here ran around everywhere. When it was time, they would come out from every corner. The children were very safe in the village. In the end, her Wen was snatched away. Fortunately, under the adults' questioning, the children gradually made things clear. It was a false alarm. Fortunately, it was a false alarm. The villagers almost called their friends to carry hoes and sticks to chase after the human traffickers. In the end, Fu Yun Ruo went to the neighboring village with Aunt May and carried Wen back. No wonder the children in the village could not snatch her back. Dashin, the child who carried Wen away, ran home and closed the door. The group of children could not enter and cried outside the door. At that time, when Wen and Dashin were staring at each other in the room, Fu Yun Ruo really did not know whether to be angry or laugh. After returning, Wen seemed to have suffered a huge blow and had been squatting in the corner of the room. If this was the anime world, there would definitely be layers of dark clouds above his head. Even when Dashin's mother dragged Dashin over to apologize, Wen hid in the room and did not come out. Brother Dashin likes Wen very much and wants Wen to be his younger brother. However, Mommy will not give Wen away. Mommy loves Wen the most. Bao Bao is just too popular. Bao Bao is so cute, smart, and alert. He is also the little boss of the children. Wen is really too amazing. Wen was comforted by his mother's comforting and flattering words. His depressed mood finally dissipated. He blamed himself for being too popular. Sigh. He had to bear troubles that he should not bear at his age. In order to let Wen completely let go of this matter, Fu Yun Ruo quickly diverted Wen's attention. She brought him to a meeting at night to listen to the gossip. As the village chief, Uncle May presided over the meeting. The wide ground was crowded with adults and children. They spontaneously brought their benches over from home. They wore simple and cool short sleeves and fanned themselves as they sat on the low benches and listened to Uncle May's loud voice in front of them. The content of the speech was about the rules that the villagers had to follow when the TV station was filming the program. For example, during the filming period, the villagers were not allowed to go up to watch and affect the filming effect. The children had to be restrained from causing trouble. There were also various requirements to cooperate with the filming of the program. Each person had 5 pieces of paper densely filled with words. Oh, then we can also be on TV? The villagers discussed. The program requires you to show reality in nature. You can do as you normally do and do what you are supposed to do. But there is one thing, you can't casually disturb others. The TV station rented a house in their village and the neighboring villages, a total of 4 villages, and lived together with the locals. Their Shangha village also had a house. After discussion with the TV station, they rented Uncle May's house. When the time came, there would be celebrities living together. The villagers did not have any objections to this. In the village, only the village chief had the highest prestige. In the same village, they were all related. Other than his family, no one else would be convinced. How could such a good thing be given to their family? The most important thing is that after the TV station comes, there will definitely be many strangers coming to our place. You have to watch the children closely and not let them run around. Uncle May kept emphasizing the important matters and made sure that everyone remembered it in their hearts before announcing the end of the meeting. Aunt May was a little flustered. She pulled Fu Yunruo and said, "Sai, I don't know if the big stars are easy to get along with. Will I not film well?" Fu Yunruo comforted her repeatedly. "It's okay, Aunt May. Just do as you usually do and treat them as juniors who are here to visit relatives." Okay. When Fu Yunruo went back, she still thought, do those folk variety shows have to do so many things behind the scenes? However, this had nothing to do with her. When the time came, she and Wenwen would be in the garden. Early the next morning, Fu Yunruo was picking vegetables in the courtyard when she suddenly sensed that there seemed to be movement outside the courtyard. She opened the door and saw a child squatting on the ground, throwing stones out of boredom. Big mountain? The child heard the movement and quickly stood up. He turned around and revealed a shy smile. "Sister Ruoru." Fu Yunruo smiled. "Are you here to play with Wenwen?" Big Mountain touched the back of his head and stretched out his hand to Fu Yunruo. "Sister Ruoruo, stretch out your hand." Fu Yunruo stretched out her hand in confusion. Big Mountain put down Fu Yunruo's hand and turned around to run away quickly. His voice came from afar. "For little brother." Fu Yunruo looked down and saw 6 candies wrapped in glass paper in her palm. She looked up and saw that the little guy had already run away. Since it was an apology gift for Wenwen, she would leave it to Wenwen to handle. Thus, she took it into the house and gave it to Wenwen, telling her the origin of the candies. Wenwen took the candies and thought to herself, at least he knows what's good for him. He'll double the candies and apologize. He put the candies in a small bag and ran to look for Zhuangzhuang. The other party returned the candies. He had saved his face in front of his little brother. A Different Life was a variety show promoted by Star TV station. The content of the show was to show different careers and different lives. Each episode had a career theme. The guests would become relevant professionals and show people the different lives of different careers. There were also some missions and drama in the show. The purpose of the show was to give the audience a different life experience. At the same time, it also let the audience understand the difficulties of each career. In the beginning, this show only invited second-tier and third-tier celebrities. Unexpectedly, the first episode of the show became popular. The audience unexpectedly liked this kind of show. The 6 permanent guests became big shots because of this variety show. They had endless resources and became more and more popular. However, no matter how popular a show was, there would be times when it encountered a bottleneck. The variety show had reached this juncture. The program team was ruthless and paid a huge price to invite 2 heavyweight special guests. They also cooperated with Panda live streaming platform. This episode was presented in the form of a live broadcast, striving to be the most realistic representation. At the beginning of the show, the 6 permanent guests made a dazzling appearance. After throwing out a lot of laughs to warm up the audience, the first special guest was introduced. At the focus of the camera, a fair-skinned and beautiful woman in a white dress walked over. The warm breeze gently lifted the gauze dress, making her look like a fairy descending to the earth. The bullet screen on the screen instantly surged, and countless people excitedly commented, "Oh yeah, goddess. She's really a fairy descending to the earth." The permanent guests were surprised and amazed. "It's Feng Shuirua." He Daosheng held his heart. "Ah, goddess. My heart is about to jump out." Hua Kai suddenly said, "If your heart jumps out, you won't be able to live." He Daosheng. "Kai, no one will think you're mute if you don't speak." Hua Kai spread her hands. "You say it as if it's not the truth if I don't say it." He Daosheng rolled his eyes at the sky. The bullet screen was filled with laughter. It was another day of being choked by the trolls. "There's a beauty who came from the heavens." Ouyang Xingheng praised the beauty with a genteel poem. Hua Kai opened her mouth to speak again, but Ouyang Xingheng quickly grabbed her shoulder and covered her mouth with one hand. He continued to recite like a poet. "Her face is like Wan Yin. Her eyebrows are like distant mountains." Hua Kai. The audience burst into laughter again. Feng Shuirua smiled sweetly and walked to the front of the audience. She greeted the permanent guests and the audience in a friendly manner. Outside the scene, a black limousine was parked at the intersection. Inside the car, Yuan Xian reminded him worriedly, "This show is live. Remember to control your temper." The black car window was half lowered. Siyu saw the first female guest and frowned. Siyu clicked his tongue and smiled. Are you sure you want me to relax and not feel disgusted? Yuan Xian also saw the female guest and was very surprised. From what I know, the special guest is not her. It was Xiao Wanning, whom he had worked with before. If he had known that it was Feng Shuirua, Yuan Xian would not have agreed to this variety show. Although the industry was full of praise for Feng Shuirua and had a good impression of her, Siyu did not like her. Yuan Xian had also done some research and knew that this woman was not as kind as she appeared to be. Moreover, the company she worked for had always kept a respectful distance from her. It could only be said that the production team had changed the female guest at the last minute without informing them. Yuan Xian frowned. He also did not expect Feng Shuirua to come to this show. It's my fault. Now that she was at the scene, he was afraid that her reputation would be damaged if she left. After all, this was a live broadcast. Yuan Xian looked for the director to understand the situation. The production team's explanation was that something had happened to the special guest at the last minute. The production team had no choice but to invite Feng Shuirua to save the day. Yuan Xian was not polite at all. The production team changed the guest at the last minute without informing us beforehand. Are you looking down on Best Actor C or Apple Entertainment? Director Peng smiled apologetically. No, it was too rushed. We just changed the female guest in a hurry this morning. We didn't have time to inform you in advance. Director Peng was helpless. How could they reject Feng Shuirua? Although the industry knew that Best Actor C did not like to be on the same stage as Feng Shuirua, he could not afford to offend Feng Shuirua, who was backed by the Fu family and the Cheng family. Yuan Xian gave the production team a warning before letting it go. They could only do this. After all, the contract did not specify who the special guest was, so the production team did not violate the contract. Siyu's public image was that of an approachable and modest person, but with her status, she was not easy to bully. They had to show their attitude, and the production team had to consider carefully. Of course, Yuan Xian decided that he would never work with such a production team again. Just because Siyu did not seem to have a strong background, they had to swallow their anger. The production team was really blind. They did not even know who they should not offend. In any case, Yuan Xian had already given them a warning. If the production team only wanted to boost Feng Shui for the sake of ratings, and if they crossed Siyu's bottom line, then the production team would only have themselves to blame for what would happen in the future. While Yuan Xian was giving the production team a warning, Siyu appeared on stage. When Siyu appeared, her popularity exploded. The live broadcast platform servers almost couldn't handle it. The guest area was even more lively. They had never imagined that the production team would invite such a big shot. They had really put in a lot of effort. After all, Siyu had always kept a low profile and rarely participated in variety shows. As long as Siyu participated in a variety show, it would definitely be a hit. Sure enough, the number of people watching the live broadcast surpassed the highest in history and even showed signs of increasing. Hua Kai also stopped arguing. She held her face and screamed, "Siyu! Oh, am I seeing things? Is it really him?" The others also turned into fans. They were really surprised. The production team was being mysterious this time. They did not even know who the special guest was. They only knew that it was a big shot. With Siyu's participation, their show would definitely reach a higher level. The pros outweighed the cons. Welcome, welcome. A warm welcome. They tacitly raised their hands and waved non-existent ribbons. Siyu strode down the aisle with his long legs. It was as if he was walking on a catwalk, attracting the attention of everyone. He smiled and greeted them in a friendly manner. "Hello, everyone." Then he greeted the camera. "Hello, everyone." Chapter 28. A Different Life was one of the most popular variety shows in recent years. With the addition of 2 big stars in the latest episode, it had become the most popular variety show of the year. The theme of this episode was a return to the garden. It mainly focused on leisure and traveling and doing some simple tasks. The reason was that the guests had worked hard after filming so many episodes, so this episode was mainly for them to relax. Of course, this was what the guests were told. Given the nature of the production team, they definitely wouldn't let them relax so easily. After the guests officially met and exchanged greetings, They got into the production team's car and headed to their destination. 5 cars of the same model drove in the same direction in a row, followed by several smaller cars. It was quite a spectacular sight. There were 2 guests in each production team's car. Siyu and the big brother of the permanent guests, He Ling, sat together. Although He Ling wasn't as famous as Siyu, he was the big brother of the entertainment industry. After noticing Siyu's easygoing attitude, he chatted with her very naturally. There were 6 permanent guests in the show. 2 special guests would be invited every episode to film for half a month. The big brother of the permanent guests, He Ling, was a veteran actor. He was 48 years old this year and was elegant, mature, and steady. The second brother, Ouyang Xingheng, was the IQ of the group. He was humorous and liked to tell cold jokes seriously. He and the fourth brother, Xian Su, were in the same car. The journey was long, and the 2 bored people in the car were seriously cracking lame jokes to see who would make the other laugh first. The 2 of them were cross-eyed, but they didn't make the other party laugh first. Instead, they made the audience laugh. The third brother, He Daosheng, was an entertainment star who made his debut through live streaming. He sat together with the 5th brother, Wang Huaibei, who had a straightforward personality. They had endless topics to talk about. The 6th brother, Hua Kai, was the only girl in the group. She sat together with the special guest, Feng Shui Ruo. Feng Shui Ruo chatted with Hua Kai in an easygoing manner. In the end, she was always choked by Hua Kai, who was like the reincarnation of a bar spirit. Feng Shui Ruo's snowball fans felt their hearts ache. They began to criticize Hua Kai in the comments section for deliberately embarrassing their Shueshue and bullying the guests. Hua Kai also had a lot of fans. Everyone loved to watch her talk about other people. When they saw Feng Shui Ruo's fans attacking their own idol, the Rainbow fans couldn't take it anymore and quickly retaliated. Although Hua Kai's fans were not as many as Feng Shui Ruo's fans, their fans followed their idols. They were all like reincarnated trolls, and they were not at a disadvantage even though they were outnumbered. In the end, due to the bumpy road, Feng Shui seemed to be suffering from motion sickness and seemed to be in a lot of pain. This caused the snowballs to flood the bullet screen with heart-wrenching comments, but the fight was not as bloody as it seemed. At the beginning of the show, the location of the live broadcast was the county town where they were heading to. However, it was still a 5 to 6 hour drive away from where they were going. The car swayed as it traveled along the mountain road. Wang Huaibei looked at the wilderness outside the car window and said worriedly, "Is the production team trying to sell us out?" He Daosheng said calmly, "What's there to be afraid of? If they want to sell us out, they should sell Brother You first." Wang Huaibei nodded seriously. That makes sense. After a long journey, they arrived at a town that had not been baptized by industry. The streets and buildings in the town gave people the feeling that they were dusty and old. It was not as bright and beautiful as a big city. The streets were quite lively, and there were stalls and shops on both sides. At a glance, there was a dazzling lineup. The people had simple smiles on their faces. When they saw a group of strangers with different styles, they looked over curiously. However, they did not approach them. Instead, they stood and watched from afar. They curiously discussed, "Is that a big star? Io, that young man looks so energetic. I know him. That's the great emperor of all ages." At first glance, most of the people on the street were old and young. There were almost no young people. The older people were not so fashionable as to chase after celebrities. Most of them did not like to watch the youth idol dramas that young people watched. They only liked to watch anti-Japanese war dramas and popular dramas of their time. When they watched TV, they only remembered the roles of the actors and did not know their real names. The only one that left a deep impression on them was Siyu, who had played the historical drama of the great emperor of all ages from his youth to his old age. As for the others who looked familiar, they had only seen them in advertisements. It took them a long time to remember their names. However, some young boys and girls screamed in excitement when they saw this group of famous stars. Soon, the program team brought over a lottery box. The program team found 4 villages to stay in. 2 people were in a group, and they drew lots to form teams. The guests had been wary of the program team causing trouble, but they did not expect the program team to be so obedient and not do anything funny. The guests could not help but think, Is the program team so conscientious this time? Did they really just let them come to the countryside for a vacation? Ladies first. They let the special guest, Feng Shui, be the first to draw lots, followed by Feng Kai Kai. After that, it was Siyu. The others also went up to draw lots in order. Everyone received a folded card with the program team's logo on the cover. He Daosheng clasped his hands together and muttered, "Heaven and earth, please bless me and my goddess." Then, he closed his eyes and held his breath. His left eye quietly opened a crack, and he nervously opened the card. Xiao Ao Village. Then, he looked at Feng Shui expectantly. The permanent guests all wanted to be in the same group as the special guests and opened their cards expectantly. Hua Kai Kai took a look and opened her card. "It seems that God did not hear your prayers," he Daosheng. The two of them looked at each other and gave each other a look of disdain. He Ling asked Ouyang Xingheng, "Where are you from?" "I'm from the Ao village." Ouyang Xingheng was happy. "What a coincidence." "Me too," he teased. "It seems that we are in the same group." There were still 4 people who had not opened their cards. They were Xian Su and Wang Huaibei. That meant that the two of them had a 2/3 chance of being in the same group as Siyu or Feng Shui. Xian Su excitedly opened his card first. Shanghe Village. Xian Su clasped his hands together and said in his heart, "Siyu, Siyu, Siyu." Feng Shui looked at Siyu with a smile and teased, "I wonder if I will be in the same group as Brother Yu." Siyu smiled faintly and opened her card. Shanghe Village. Siyu's card had the words, "Shanghe Village, Mei Family" written on it. Below it was an address. "Yeah." Xian Su jumped up. Siyu said regretfully, "It seems that I won't have the honor." Feng Shui's smile didn't change. She looked at Wang Huaibei and smiled. "I'm happy to be in the same group as Huaibei." Wang Huaibei smiled. "I'm happy too." Director Peng wiped his sweat and pretended that he didn't see Feng Shui's expression. He thought that he couldn't afford to offend the Fu family and the Chang family, but he also couldn't afford to offend Siyu, who was backed by Apple Entertainment. Director Peng said through the loudspeaker, "You have already decided where you want to go. Next, you will have to find a place to stay in the village." Each of the men had 1 suitcase, while the 2 women had 2 large suitcases. It was summer, and they were all wearing summer clothes. The filming of the show would last for half a month, so the men were more casual. The women, on the other hand, had to bring skincare products and so on. Feng Shui had 2 suitcases and was worried about how to carry them. Wang Huaibei helped her carry them in a gentlemanly manner. Apart from that, each of them only had a maximum of 100 yuan. "Hey, how do we get to Xiao Ao village?" He Daosheng mumbled. "Should we ask someone?" After splitting into groups, they quickly dispersed and went to the village on their own. "Brother Yu, are we going too?" Xian Su stood beside Siyu. He was a little nervous talking to his idol. Siyu was tall and straight. He carried the suitcase and looked around. "No hurry. Let's walk around first." Thus, Siyu leisurely strolled around the streets. Xian Su carried the suitcase and followed behind, looking very obedient. He looked left and right curiously. Siyu strolled around the streets and bought a bag of candy, 2 bags of fruit, a bag of bananas, and a bag of apples with 100 yuan. The prices here were relatively low, but he bought enough. After paying 100 yuan, he didn't have much left. In the end, he only had 20 yuan left. After asking for the location of the bus, they found a car to take them to their destination. When the driver saw this group of strangers, he looked at them curiously. He was a little reserved at first, but the energetic young man spoke to him warmly and didn't put on any airs. After a while, the middle-aged driver let go of his reservations and chatted with Siyu. Feng Shui and Wang Huaibei had already arrived at Xiahe village. Feng Shui walked in the village and looked at the filthy environment by the roadside. She frowned slightly with her back facing the camera, but quickly smoothed out. When the camera turned to her, her eyes were smiling. Not long after, a group of filthy children looked at Feng Shui and Wang Huaibei as if they were monkeys. The children in the countryside didn't have many restrictions. During the holidays, they would go out and run around. In the morning, they were clean when they went out, but not long after, they were all dirty. When they saw the strangers in the village, they were very curious. However, They had been instructed by the adults not to get close to the strangers, so they just looked at them from afar. Feng Shui laughed. It's weird to be looked at like that. I feel like an animal in the zoo. Wang Huaibei laughed. They're looking at you because you're pretty, Shui Ruo. To be honest, Feng Shuiruo's appearance wasn't the most outstanding in the entertainment industry. However, she was as bright as the bright moon, and her untainted temperament made her 8 out of 9 out of 10. Feng Shui waved her hand and said, I'm just average. You don't believe me? Wait, I'll go ask. Children are the worst at lying. After Wang Huaibei finished speaking, he looked at the children and tried to speak kindly. He waved at a child in the crowd and said, Child, come here. The children took a step back and looked at each other. Then, they stared at them with wide eyes. Wang Huaibei saw that the children didn't want to come over and thought that they were afraid of strangers. He didn't force them. Instead, he said, Children, don't you think this big sister Shui Ruo is the prettiest? The children stared at Feng Shui for a long time. Then, a young child's voice said, Big sister Ruo is the prettiest. Wang Huaibei looked at Feng Shui proudly. Am I right? The children's eyes are as bright as snow. The live broadcast room was filled with comments praising the beauty of the goddess. Feng Shui's lips curled up. Being praised always made one feel better. It's big sister Ruo, not her. A small voice retorted. Wang Huaibei and Feng Shui immediately looked over. The little girl who spoke immediately hid behind her friends and timidly revealed her eyes. The big boy in front of the little girl held his head high proudly. You're not as pretty as big sister Ruo. His words caused a wave of agreement. Big sister Ruo is the prettiest. Feng Shui's smile froze. A village girl compared to her? Her name was so similar to hers? The live broadcast room was filled with laughter. That's right. The children's eyes are as bright as snow. Yes, yes, yes. The children are the worst at lying. This is the fastest scene I've ever seen. Let me tell a joke. The most beautiful goddess is not as pretty as a village girl. There were also anti-fans of Feng Shui in the live broadcast room. At this moment, they were mocked, but they were quickly covered up by the comments of the fans. Many of the fans said that the children had never seen the world and didn't know anything. They even mocked how beautiful a village girl could be. Wang Huaibei's expression was a little awkward. He didn't think that the children would be so rude. If it was recorded, it could be edited out, but this was a live broadcast. The children seemed to sense that the atmosphere wasn't right and immediately dispersed. Wang Huaibei laughed dryly. The children are still young. Feng Shui smiled indifferently and said gently, It's okay. Then she changed the topic. We're almost there, right? Yes, yes. At this moment, Siyu and Xian Su were in a car heading to Shangha village. Hey, is there such a poor place nowadays? Looking at them trekking through mountains and rivers, I feel like I'm living in a different world. The audience who lived in the big cities all year round always felt that it was very far away from them. Even though there were often charity projects that said that they were helping the children in the mountains and helping people get out of the mountains. Now that they were watching the live broadcast, they could feel it with their own eyes. When the celebrities arrived in town, they thought that it was already remote enough. They didn't expect that the place they were going to was even more remote. Especially when the live broadcast room explained that this place wasn't the most remote place. There were many more places that were even more remote. It was more than half an hour's journey from town to their destination on a 3-wheeled motorcycle. They went around a mountain road and entered a village in the mountains. When they were there, they could see mountains all around them. The villages were most densely clustered in the large, flat col between the mountains. It was said that some villages were built halfway up and at the foot of the mountains. Xiaogao village was on the mountainside, and one of the groups was going to this village. Some of them had never left this place in their lives. Most of them had gone out when they were young, but in the end, they returned to their hometown to retire when they got older. Life is much better now. In the past, before the road was built, we could only walk over the mountains to get to town. The government's policies are good. Since the road was built, it's much more convenient for us to travel. The distance has also been reduced by more than half. A bridge was built halfway up the 2 mountains to connect the 2 sides. It was about 500 meters long, so people didn't have to walk to the bottom of the mountain to continue walking. Unfortunately, their place was too remote. Even if the road was built, it wouldn't be of much use. People and cars didn't have to pass through here. There was nowhere to go, and there was nothing worth investing in the mountains. The only comforting thing was that the environment hadn't been destroyed. The air was fresh, and it was very comfortable when the wind blew on their faces. The driver sent them to the entrance of Shangha village and enthusiastically helped to unload their luggage. Walk along this path for a while, then turn right. The third building is the Mei family's house. Thank you, brother. You paid the fare, then carried their luggage and walked in the direction the driver pointed. Su sighed. Brother, you're amazing. You can talk so much with uncle. If it were me, I wouldn't know what to say. Their relationship instantly became closer. If they hadn't insisted on paying the fare, they would have waived the fare. Siyu's attitude was gentle. You're still young. You can learn slowly. The two of them walked one after another to the front of a farmhouse. Su tried to look up. They would be staying in the house for half a month. His heart relaxed, and his face was full of surprise. It looks good. He thought that in such a remote area, their living conditions would be worse. He didn't expect it to be so good. It was a 2.5-story house with ceramic tiles on the outside and a large yard. It was neatly maintained and looked clean and tidy. The production team really did something this time. Su believed that the production team really allowed them to take a vacation. Siyu didn't say a word. The yard door was ajar. Siyu didn't directly push the door open. Instead, he knocked on the door. Come in. A loud voice came from inside. Siyu pushed the door open and entered. A benevolent-looking woman came out of the house. When she saw the two of them enter, her eyes lit up. She said warmly, "Oh, you're finally here. Welcome, welcome." Siyu said warmly, "Hello, Auntie. I'm Siyu. You can call me a you." Su also greeted her politely. "Hello, Auntie. I'm Su. You can call me Xiao Su." "To you, Xiao Su. You can call me Auntie Mei." Auntie Mei looked at the two young men and warmly invited them into the house. "Don't just stand in the yard. Come in and rest." Auntie Mei looked at the house full of people and smiled warmly. She had been very nervous in front of Yunrua. Now that she was facing them, Auntie Mei was able to stand her ground. She completely treated Siyu and Su as her nephews who had come to visit her family. She didn't feel uncomfortable at all. "Auntie Mei, this is a little gift from us." Siyu placed 2 big bags of fruits on the table. "You're already here. Why did you buy fruits?" Auntie Mei said angrily and smiled even more warmly. Siyu's attitude was modest and friendly. "It's my duty. I'll have to trouble Auntie Mei and Uncle Mei to take care of us during this period." Auntie Mei's smile became even brighter. She brought the two of them to the second floor. "There's only me and the old man at home. We'll stay on the first floor. If there's anything, you can look for me and the old man. This is my son's room. These 2 rooms are empty. You can stay here for the time being." Auntie Mei only had one son. When they built the house, they didn't build much. There were only 2 rooms on the first floor. One was for the 2 old men, and the other was for storing miscellaneous items. There were only 3 rooms on the second floor. After her son got married, they would be more well off. When they arrived, it was already evening. The guests had a relaxing night and had a sumptuous farmhouse dinner. Just as they were about to spend the day relaxing, a mission card was presented to them. The nearby villages became lively because of the celebrity's arrival. Everyone excitedly went to watch and discuss from afar. However, they lost interest in less than 2 days. The celebrity also had 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. After looking at her for a long time, there wasn't anything special about her. Furthermore, she was clumsy when it came to household chores and farm work. If she lived in a village, she wouldn't even be able to support herself. Furthermore, they couldn't even recognize the crops, which made them a laughing stock. Compared to the bustling outside, the flower bed was as quiet as ever. Fu Yunruo wanted to take a look at the celebrities who came here to film the show to see if they looked familiar, but she realized that her eldest brother's flower bud seemed to have mutated. For this reason, Fu Yunruo devoted all her energy to her eldest brother. Fu Yunruo's initial live broadcast of planting flowers was to cultivate mutated orchids, but later, she changed to planting more than 10 orchids. However, She never gave up on the idea of inducing mutation and tried it during the cultivation process. Unfortunately, Lao Wu and Lao Qi did not mutate even when they fully bloomed. The other few orchids also did not show any signs of mutation. Only the eldest brother's lotus petal orchid, Fu Yun Ruo, was keenly aware of the difference. To be cautious, she carefully observed it for 3 days. After confirming that it had indeed successfully mutated, she called Uncle Guo with a trembling voice. The moment Uncle Guo walked in, Fu Yun Ruo said excitedly, "Uncle Guo, can you see if the lotus petal orchid has mutated?" Even though she already had the answer in her heart, Fu Yun Ruo still wanted Uncle Guo to confirm it again. Uncle Guo carefully observed for a while before straightening up. He said with relief, "It has indeed mutated." Fu Yun Ruo was so excited that her face turned red. She had actually succeeded in cultivating it. "Take good care of it." Uncle Guo walked out of the greenhouse with his hands behind his back. His footsteps were much lighter. As soon as he left the greenhouse, Uncle Guo could not help but immediately take out his phone to call his nemesis. "Hello, Oldemo." Fu Yun Ruo stayed in the greenhouse for a while before she could not sit still and went to look for her son. At this moment, Wenwan was wearing a cute straw hat and was tossing around in the vegetable field. This straw hat was specially made for Wenwan by Uncle Mei. It was very suitable for her to wear and was not heavy. The brim of the hat could also block most of the sunlight. Under the exquisite little hat, her small face was flushed red and looked even more exquisite and cute. Wenwan Ruo felt that she would be causing trouble if she helped to take care of the flowers, so she decided to help take care of the vegetable field. He saw that the vegetables in the vegetable field were wilted and the ground was so dry that it was cracking, so he used the water pipe to fetch water over. He turned on the tap and used the sprinkler to water the vegetable field. The sky full of water mist sprayed above the vegetable field. He saw that the water vapor seemed to refract colors in midair and wondered if there would be a rainbow. Then he turned the sprinkler to the highest point in the sky. Fu Yun Ruo came out and saw her son playing with water happily. She hurriedly went over to turn off the tap. "Didn't Mommy say that you're not allowed to play with water?" Fu Yun Ruo squatted in front of Wenwan and slapped his chubby little butt. "Little mischievous brat." Wenwan widened his eyes and had a sad and indignant expression on his face. "I'm not playing with water," he shouted. "I'm watering the vegetables." Fu Yun Ruo turned her head and saw that the vegetable field was wet. It was obvious that she had watered too much. God, could these vegetables still survive? Yes, baby is the most obedient. Mommy has wronged baby. Mommy is wrong. Fu Yun Ruo touched his little clothes. They were a little damp, so she carried him into the house and prepared to change his clothes for him. Mommy knows that baby wants to help Mommy, but the next time you want to water the vegetables, you have to ask Mommy to help you. Wenwan hugged Fu Yun Ruo's neck. "All right, on account of your sincere apology, I'll forgive you for spanking my butt." After Wenwan changed his clothes, Fu Yun Ruo happily shared with Wenwan about the mutated orchids that she had planted. Wenwan was also very happy when he heard that. Then, when he heard Fu Yun Ruo say that she wanted to spend more time taking care of the orchids, he tilted his head and suddenly thought of something. "Then aren't we going back to the village?" Huh? Fu Yun Ruo thought that Wenwan would definitely miss her little friend after not seeing her for a long time. So she nodded and said, "Yes." Wenwan said considerately, "Mommy, you have something to do first. I can play here." Fu Yun Ruo heard her son's childish words and hugged him emotionally. "It's okay. Mommy still has time to accompany baby. Baby is the most important." At this moment, Uncle Guo walked in and said, "You do your thing. I'll bring Wenwan over." They would send him over in the morning and pick him up in the afternoon. There would be no delay. Fu Yun Ruo thought about it and agreed. Wenwan had so many little friends and elders in the village, so she couldn't be more at ease. Uncle Guo would send him over in the morning, and she would pick him up in the evening. There wouldn't be much delay on the way. Therefore, the next day, Uncle Guo wanted to bring Wenwan back to the village. Wenwan thought that he hadn't seen his little brothers for a while, and that he could play with them while his mother was busy during the day. Therefore, after confirming that his mother would come to pick him up in the evening, he happily agreed. Uncle Guo drove the small tram to send Wenwan back to the village. As soon as the tram arrived at the entrance of the village, Wenwan saw his group of little friends. As soon as the tram stopped, he quickly climbed out of the tram and ran towards his little friends. "Grandpa, I'm going to play," Uncle Gore responded. He had something to do in the village, so he didn't go back. Instead, he went to another place. Wenwen successfully met up with his little friends. Zhuang Zhuang, Little Shirtu, and the others were happy to see Wenwen. The group of little friends quickly played together. They were playing hide and seek. Wenwen couldn't think of anything else to play at the moment, so he played along. Wenwen knew that there was a hiding place that ordinary people couldn't find unless they walked out on their own. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't be caught. Wenwen hurriedly ran away with his short legs and quickly avoided everyone. Then, he hid under a wooden board behind a haystack in the old house. He only needed to estimate the approximate time to get out. Next time, he could continue to hide here. Wenwen thought that he was really too smart. Every time, his little brothers couldn't find where he was. He was the only one who hadn't been found. They all looked at him with admiration. Wenwen waited and waited. Before the time came, he heard a sound from outside. Wenwen held his breath and unconsciously widened his eyes. His secret base had been discovered? The next moment, the wooden board was lifted and a low voice with a smile was heard. "Oh, look, what did I find?" A slender hand reached over and grabbed his clothes from the back, lifting him up easily. "Whose little cutie is this?" A handsome face appeared in front of him. Wenwen's eyes suddenly widened. See you." Chapter 29. Siyu had come here to pack some firewood. The firewood in the kitchen was almost gone, so he took the initiative to go to May's house to get some firewood. On his way back, he sensed a slight movement near the old house. He thought that the production crew had thrown a small animal nearby for them to eat, so he cooperated and came over to check it out. In the end, it turned out to be a little cutie. Siyu sized up the chubby little ball in front of him. After making sure that he could accept the small amount of dust on him, he carried him in his arms. The little ball was soft and had a milky fragrance. His skin was snow white and his facial features were exquisite and cute. He was worlds apart from the other children he had seen recently. Siyu originally thought that he didn't have any feelings for children. Perhaps it was because he had recently fallen in love with the old and the young. So when he saw such an adorable and obedient little ball, he felt a little fond of it. "Little kid, why are you hiding here?" Siyu walked out with the child in his arms. He gestured to the cameraman to try his best not to focus on the child. Even so, the camera zoomed in on the moment when Siyu lifted up the wooden plank. The cute little doll was squatting in a ball like a frightened little animal. She looked over with her big round eyes, and her chubby cheeks looked like they were carved from jade. At that moment, the screen went silent. Then, a dense barrage of comments flooded the screen. "Yeah, whose family's cutie is this? Whose family's cutie is this? I'm suffocated by his cuteness. You're not alone. You're not alone. Cameraman, hurry up and take pictures of the cutie. I want to see the cutie." This bold and red sentence attracted a lot of agreement. The fans' rebellion was just a cutie's distance away. Siyu's fans held their faces and screamed for the cutie to appear on the screen. As for Siyu, who was he? They did not know him. Wenwen did not know what was going on in the live broadcast room. He stayed in Siyu's arms, his little body stiff from nervousness. When he heard Siyu's question, he stammered, "Hide and seek." His trembling voice was recorded in the live broadcast room. When it reached everyone's ears, it instantly made them cry out in joy. They all see you to be as warm as a spring breeze to the little cutie. They didn't want to scare her. "Oh, hide and seek." Siyu carried the baby in one hand and the dustpan in the other. The firewood was steady. After walking for a short distance, Siyu noticed that the children around them were looking in their direction. Many pairs of eyes were fixed on the little dumpling in his hand, as if they were eager to snatch it away from him. He put the little dumpling down and rubbed his little head. When you play hide and seek in the future, remember to hide with your brothers and sisters. Such a young child, hiding in a place where no one could easily find. What if an accident happened? Siyu straightened up and walked forward with the dustpan. Wenwen rubbed his head and looked at the tall figure walking away. His cheeks were rosy. Siyu had actually rubbed his head. Wenwen's little heart was thumping. It was Siyu. So he was here to film the show? In his previous life, when he was in the entertainment industry, Siyu had already left it. He had never had the chance to meet him. Even though he was unscrupulous in his pursuit of fame, Siyu had always been someone he looked up to. He saw Siyu as his idol and hoped that he could reach his level of success. Fu Wen had been at the bottom for many years and finally had the opportunity to become the second male lead in a drama. The drama became popular and his character was likable. He thought that he would also become popular, but because he was in the way of others, he was suppressed and kept quiet. Later on, someone edited a video of him and commented that his acting was similar to Siyu's. The company that Fu Wen signed with wasn't famous, and he wasn't famous either. He wasn't trained in acting, and the company didn't arrange any classes for him. In order to hone his acting skills, he specially studied Siyu's acting. He had already studied all the roles that Siyu had played. Perhaps he had imitated Siyu's acting too deeply and unconsciously revealed some of his acting skills. This gave Fu Wen's manager an idea, and he suggested that Fu Wen follow this path. At that time, he wanted to stand out too much and was persuaded by his manager to start marketing his character. He deliberately imitated Siyu's mannerisms and acting style to market himself as Little Siyu. Although he was ridiculed by the public, he took advantage of his popularity to land a few dramas. In the end, he successfully made a comeback and became famous. He had the ability and acting skills to begin with. After deliberately imitating Siyu, he really had the temperament of Siyu. Although most of Siyu's fans were scolding him, Fu Wen didn't care. He wanted fame. He wanted to climb to the top and not be bullied so easily. After he won the Best Actor award, he completely got rid of the title of Little Siyu. This period of marketing had become his only dark history. Fu Wen's previous life had always been controversial. His anti-fans were polarized. Love made him live, and hate made him die. He didn't care about any of this. But now that he had met Siyu in person, Wen suddenly thought of a question that he hadn't deliberately thought about. What was Siyu's attitude when he found out that someone had used him to climb to the top? Did he look down on Siyu, or was he indifferent? Wen thought that Siyu must hate him. No, he probably didn't take it to heart, right? He remembered that he had spoken to Siyu's former manager at a banquet. At the time, Manager Yuan had retired from managing artists and was one of the major shareholders of Apple Entertainment. Back then, Manager Yuan had been quite amiable with Wen, who was still known as Little Siyu, so he probably didn't mind, right? But if Wen had been in Siyu's shoes and someone had used him to create hype, he was afraid that Siyu would be disgusted. His hand unconsciously tugged at the corner of his shirt. After Siyu and the invisible cameraman left, the children swarmed forward and surrounded Wen. Wen, Uncle Yu carried you so high up in his arms. We thought that we couldn't snatch you back. Wen, how did you end up with Uncle Yu? Wen was immersed in his own thoughts for a while before he was interrupted by a group of chattering voices. He heard the children's curious questions and replied, "He found me? Wow, Uncle Yu is so amazing." Dian clapped her hands. We couldn't find Wen. That's right. We couldn't find where Wen was hiding every time. Uncle Yu is amazing. After the children finished exclaiming, they saw that Wen was unusually silent and hurriedly asked, Wen, what's wrong? Little Shirtu asked with concern. Did you think that Uncle Yu was a bad person and got scared? Don't be scared. Uncle Yu is a good person. He's a big celebrity. Dian seriously patted Wen's back like an adult comforting a child. Wen, don't be scared. Uncle Yu is a very good person. He even gave us candies. That's right. Wen perked up. I'm fine. However, at this time, he was a little worried. The children couldn't see anything and thought that Wen was really fine. So they continued to play the next round of hide-and-seek. The person who was looking for him covered his eyes and shouted, 1, 2. The group of children laughed shrilly and scattered. Wen also ran with his short legs. He subconsciously wanted to continue hiding in the same place as before, but his footsteps couldn't help but deviate. He remembered that the celebrity who came to their village to film the show lived at Grandma May's house. Wen couldn't help but run to Grandma May's house. On the way, an adult saw Wen and kindly asked Wen where he was going. Wen replied in a bright and childish voice, I'm going to Grandma May's house. When he reached Grandma May's house, he stopped and hesitated for a moment. but still didn't dare to push the door open. He dawdled for a long time and quietly pushed open the half-closed courtyard door. He leaned against the door and quietly looked inside through the gap. His eyes darted around, but he couldn't see anything through the small gap. Just as he was hesitating whether to push open the door a little more, suddenly, the door was pulled open. Without support, Wenwen lost his balance and fell forward. Wenwen's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously waved his small hands, wanting to grab something. Then, he bumped into a hard and soft pillar and subconsciously grabbed it. Then, he hugged it tightly with his two small hands. It was so close that he almost fell and rolled. The pillar moved, and Wenwen subconsciously hugged it even tighter. His feet were suspended in the air. He lifted his two chubby little feet and subconsciously wrapped them around the pillar. The best way to hug a thigh square root. I also want such a cute baby to be my leg accessory. At this moment, I don't know who to envy. You had long noticed this little ball. His big round eyes looked curiously inside. As soon as he opened the door, he lost his support and fell over. He fluttered like a duckling and his small hands grabbed onto his pants. You could have moved his feet away, but he didn't know why. When he felt the pull of his pants, he pressed down on his pants to prevent them from being pulled down. Feeling the soft touch on his feet and the weight of his chubby body, he lifted his feet and shook them. How much longer do you want to hug me? Wenwen looked up and saw Siyu looking down at him. His chubby face turned red. He hurriedly put down his feet and hands and took a few steps back. I'm sorry, Wenwen said nervously. He secretly looked up at him, then quickly lowered his head and stared at the ground. He thought embarrassedly that he was really embarrassed. Siyu raised his eyebrows and squatted down. Little guy, come here. Wenwen raised her head and glanced at him. She hesitated and did not go forward. Are you afraid of me? He hurriedly shook his head. He wasn't afraid. It was just that Wenwen didn't have the confidence to face him. Siyu said again, come here. Wenwen walked over with small steps. Siyu held his armpits with both hands and stood up to lift him up. Wenwen's entire body soared into the air, and his vision quickly rose higher and higher. He was even taller than Siyu. Wenwen's eyes widened. His chubby little feet moved in the air a few times. Then he looked at Siyu quietly. At this moment, Aunt May walked out of the house. When she saw Wenwen, she smiled like a flower. Wenwen, you're back. She walked over and smiled kindly at Wenwen. Your mother even called me. She was about to look for you. Aunt May was happy to hear that Ruoruo had asked her to take care of Wenwen when she returned to the village to play. When Wenwen heard about his mother, he immediately looked over. What did mother say? You have to eat lunch and sleep after that, Aunt May said with a smile. She repeated Fu Yun's instructions. Grandma will make your favorite pork with egg rolls. Wenwen's eyes lit up. He said softly, Thank you, Grandma. Siyu saw that Aunt May knew the child and carried him with one hand. Xian Su, who was in the kitchen, heard voices in the courtyard and walked out curiously. When he saw Siyu carrying a delicate child, he was delighted. Brother Yu, where did you kidnap this child from? Xian Su walked in front of the two of them, looking at the little fellow's healthy red clouds and bulging milk. His fingers were itching to pinch. He raised his hand, wanting to pinch it. Siyu raised his hand to stop him and said sternly, You can't touch a child's face. Really? Xian Su looked at him reluctantly. Okay. Wenwen looked at Xian Su with some curiosity in her eyes. There was another benefit of going back to the past. She could see many celebrities who had disappeared or semi-retired 10 or 20 years later and were now popular. He remembered this Xian Su. Later on, when he participated in the show, he even covered one of his classic songs. Aunt, I'll take Wenwen to buy soy sauce then. Aunt May saw that Wenwen did not reject Siyu and looked at him with sparkling eyes. She knew that Wenwen liked him very much, so she agreed happily. Okay. Siyu lifted Wenwen and put him on his shoulder before walking out of the courtyard steadily. Wenwen held Siyu's shoulder with one hand and looked around curiously. It was the first time he sat on someone's shoulder. He was not worried about falling off at all. He only felt very safe. It was the first time he saw the scenery from this angle. The familiar village felt very novel. Although his mother often hugged him, she was still a weak woman and could not put him on her shoulder. At this moment, Wenwen felt a little emotional. Perhaps this was the feeling of a father. However, he quickly discarded this thought. There was no need for a third person in the family. It was enough for him and his mother. He did not need that scumbag man. Wenwen lowered his head and looked at Cuyu's side profile. He pursed his lips and said softly, "I'm sorry." Ciyu turned his head and looked at the little boy. He saw the anxiety in his eyes and smiled. It's okay. He thought that Wenwen was apologizing because he had accidentally bumped into him. He did not know that he was referring to something else. He thought that this little boy was very sensible despite his young age. Then, are we friends? Wenwen's voice was filled with anticipation. At this moment, he only thought that if he could become friends with his idol, his life would be more complete. He would never do anything bad in this life. He wanted to be an open and above-board person. He wanted to be his mother's pride. Cuyu's voice was strange. You want to be friends with me? Wenwen nodded seriously. Yes. However, Wenwen had forgotten that he was still a little boy who was not even 4 years old. He wanted to be friends with Ciyu. It was hilarious. Of course, it was also because the person who proposed to be friends with them was a little boy. If it had been an adult, Cuyu's fans would have scolded him for trying to ride on their idol's popularity. Shameless. However, at this moment, I also want to be friends with the little cutie. Count me in. Yes, yes. If brother Yu doesn't want to be friends with you, we'll scold him. Cuyu's voice contained a hint of laughter. Okay. Wenwen immediately revealed a big smile. However, after he was done laughing, he remembered that he had to be more reserved and not reveal his emotions. He quickly restrained himself. He could not help but cover his mouth with his hands. His eyes curved into beautiful crescents, and he could not help but curl his legs. He proudly thought about how he was friends with his idol. On the way, he met his friends. They asked Wenwen if he still wanted to play hide-and-seek. Wenwen said loudly, I don't want to play anymore. I want to eat. When the other children saw this, they stopped playing and went home to get ready to eat. They would continue playing with Wenwen in the afternoon. The two of them quickly arrived at the village's small store. Wenwen saw Grandpa May, who often gave him snacks, and greeted him sweetly. Second Grandpa May chuckled. He immediately took out a milk candy and stuffed it into Wan Wen's hand before placing it into his trouser pocket. Ciyu bought a bottle of soy sauce. When they went back, Wenwen did not want him to carry him. Although he liked him, he believed that they were friends of equal status. How could he let his friend carry him? Thus, he righteously rejected him. Then, he volunteered to help carry the soy sauce. He thought that soy sauce did not match his idol's style, so he would do the hard work for him. Ciyu looked at Wenwen's small body and placed the soy sauce bottle on the ground. Wenwen carried it with one hand, but he could not lift it. Wenwen was surprised. Was the soy sauce bottle that heavy? A glass bottle of soy sauce only weighed about 1 kilogram. He hugged the bottle with both hands and lifted it with great difficulty. He took 2 steps, but perhaps because of the weight, he wobbled. Ciyu, who was half squatting beside him, propped his chin up and watched his new friend carry the soy sauce bottle like a little penguin. He could not help but reach out to poke him. His wobbly body immediately lost its balance and sat on the ground. Wenwen sat on the ground with the soy sauce bottle in his arms. His small face was still in a daze. The audience in the bullet screen laughed and condemned Ciyu for being so naughty. Didn't he see how difficult it was for the child to walk? Ciyu could not help but laugh. This child was quite funny. At times, he seemed mature beyond his age, but at other times, he was completely like a child. In the end, Ciyu carried the child home with the soy sauce bottle. In other words, it was the child who brought the soy sauce home. Wenwen nestled in Ciyu's arms, his face as red as a monkey's butt. He had embarrassed himself in front of his idol. During lunch, the live stream was turned off. Ciyu and Xian Su were more relaxed. Xian Su ate in big mouthfuls and complained, "This program team is too much. The missions are so difficult that I'm about to break down." Not only did they have to complete the missions, but they also had to pay attention to the jokes. Hence, they had to act more exaggeratedly and be careful not to say anything wrong. Generally speaking, no variety show was easy. Especially since they were in the countryside, they had never done farm work or raised poultry. They were exhausted from the missions. When one ate the delicious egg dumplings and listened to the gossip of the program team, he felt the same way. That's right. Variety shows, especially those that involved physical labor, were very tiring. Every time after the show ended, he would be so exhausted that he did not even want to move a finger. Aunt May did not forget to put some vegetables in his bowl. When you can't just eat meat. Eat some vegetables. When one instinctively wanted to act coquettishly. However, Grandma May's stance was not as firm as his mother's. Grandma May surrendered when he acted coquettishly. Then, he met Cuy's eyes. He put his chopsticks to his mouth and bit off the vegetables. After chewing a few times and swallowing them, he said seriously, "I'm actually not picky about food." Yes, he could not let his idol think that he was a picky eater. Okay. Ciyu nodded and used the serving chopsticks to pick up some vegetables for one. He filled his small bowl and said seriously, "Then eat more." Su snorted and covered his mouth to stifle his laughter. When one was speechless, why did he feel that his idol's personality was a little mischievous? No, it must be an illusion. Chapter 30. After lunch, Ciyu and Su chatted in the courtyard. After a few days of interaction, Su was very natural in front of Ciyu and spoke casually. When one took a stroll in the courtyard to digest his food while listening to their conversation. After half an hour, Aunt May came over to take one to his room for a nap. When one had a very regular schedule. Every day, he would take a nap half an hour after lunch. Uncle May and Aunt May were naturally worried about one when going to the old house alone. One claimed that he was an adult and wanted to sleep alone, so he took a nap in Aunt May's son's room. One was very familiar with the May family's house, so he was used to it. Although he was still thinking about his idol downstairs, his biological clock made him fall asleep quickly. His little tummy rose and fell, and he started snoring. When one woke up, the house was quiet. He rubbed his eyes and climbed out of bed. He opened the door and went downstairs. Aunt May was the only one in the courtyard. Ciyu and Su were nowhere to be seen. When Wen's eyes wandered around, Where are Uncle Ciyu and Uncle Su? Aunt May laughed and said, "They're out on a mission." Aunt May had specially gone to see how the TV station filmed the show, but these celebrities were just doing what they were used to doing. She didn't understand what was so interesting about it, so she didn't pay any attention. One knew that he couldn't disturb them. He regretted it for a while. He wanted to spend more time with Ciyu, but he wasn't in a hurry. He heard that they would be filming for half a month. Then, he hopped out to play with his friends. Before he could jump out of the courtyard, one suddenly froze. He squatted down and covered his head, as if he was too ashamed to see anyone. He had been a child for so long that his thinking had become that of a child. Why didn't he think that Ciyu was doing a live broadcast in the morning? How could he filter out such a huge live streaming device and only have eyes for his idol? Was he in the picture? How many shameful things had he done? Then wouldn't he be publicly executed? He had even shamelessly said that he wanted to be friends with Ciyu. He would probably be mocked and scolded by his fans just like in her previous life. When buried her face and curled up like an ostrich. She refused to admit that she was the silly one. The shouts of his friends came from outside the courtyard. When one looked up, forget it. Anyway, he had long been trained to be thick-skinned. Those curses would not hurt him at all. Moreover, his mother did not allow him to watch too many electronic devices. He did not even have enough time to watch dramas every day, so how could he have the time to watch variety shows? If he didn't look, he wouldn't be able to see anyone scolding him. He would just pretend that they didn't exist. In any case, he was still young. He could talk about the future in the future. Maybe in 10 or 20 years, people would have already forgotten about his dark history. After one figured it out, she continued to run out and replied in a cute voice, "I'm coming." The group of children in the village soon gathered together, and it was very lively. Not long after, a group of children ran towards them. Dali and little Shirtu looked and saw that it was Dashin from the neighboring village and more than 10 of his followers. Little Shirtu and the others thought that Dashin wanted to snatch the children again, so they quickly surrounded Wenwan and hugged her tightly. They looked at them vigilantly. Wenwan, who was squeezed so tightly that she almost could not breathe, was speechless. "What are you trying to do?" Dali shouted, I'm warning you. Wen is from our village. You can't snatch her. Beat the hell out of you. Dian clenched her small fists and shouted fiercely, I won't snatch Wen, Dashin said as he glanced at Wen, who was completely covered. Dali and the other children were still very vigilant when they heard this. They thought that Dashin wanted to make them lower their guard and then snatch Wen away again. Wen went through a lot of hardships and finally squeezed out of the protective circle. There was a layer of sweat on her face, and her cheeks were rosy. Dali and another older child stood on either side of Wen like guardians and stared at them with bright eyes. Wen looked up and asked seriously, What are you doing here? Although Dashin had returned the candy many times over, it did not mean that Wen did not remember that Dashin had carried her away. Dashin looked at Wen, and his eyes lit up. I've already given you the candy. Will you bring me along to play? Wen was speechless. Wait, that candy was the membership fee, not an apology gift? Dashin suggested, let's play together. The more the merrier. The children were very proud. Wen won't play with you. Dashin tilted his head. Why? He puffed out her chest and said, You're all dirty. Wen won't play with dirty children. You don't wash your hands. Your clothes are dirty. Your faces are dirty too. They spoke one after another. Dashin turned to look at his younger brother and compared them to the other side. Indeed, the children there were dressed very neatly and clean. Their hands and faces were very clean. On his side, the young ones had snot hanging from their noses. Their faces looked like they had not been washed for years. Their hands were also black and their clothes were dirty too. Wen won't hold hands with children who don't wash their hands. Dian raised her head proudly. In order to be able to hold hands with Wen, she asked her grandmother to wash her hands every morning, noon, and night. Every day, her hands were washed until they were white and tender. Then we'll go wash up too, Dashin ordered, and the group of children rushed into the river. Dali and the rest saw them running away and followed. The children rushed into the river like a swarm of bees. The water level of the river that ran through the entire village was very low, and the current was very gentle. Even children of 4 or 5 years old could stand steadily in the water. The group of children were simply and roughly washing their faces, hands, and feet. Someone accidentally splashed water on another person, and that person splashed back. Not long after, the group of children started to have a water fight. Dali and the rest watched and were ready to join in. Then, they also ran over and started a water fight. The sound of a large group of children gathered together seemed to be able to shake the sky. Not long after, a wet Dashin walked in front of him. He reached out and held Wen's small and soft hand. A cold and wet feeling came over, and Wen subconsciously raised her head. Dashin said confidently, I've washed my hands clean. Then, he said straightforwardly, I don't want to be the boss anymore. I'll be your younger brother. In the future, you'll be the boss of our lower river village. After he ruled the children of Upper River Village and became the boss, he used his cuteness to commit murder and unified the neighboring village. When Dali heard Dashin's declaration, he immediately accepted happily. Okay, you recognize Wen as your boss. We'll be good brothers in the future. I don't want to. It was already very tiring to take care of the children of one village. Did he still want to take care of 2 villages' children? It was too tiring. However, the excited Dali and the rest did not hear his protest. They happily accepted the children of the neighboring villages. It was in the children's nature to love excitement. The more people there were, the more excited they were. Not long after, Wen was also affected by their emotions. He threw away his awkwardness and happily played together. Unknowingly, an afternoon passed. Wen had a smile on his face, and his cheeks were rosy. Seeing a young and beautiful woman pushing a small tram at the intersection, Wen's eyes lit up. He happily ran over with his short legs. Mommy! Fuyun Ruo responded sweetly from afar. When the other children saw Fuyun Ruo, they happily surrounded her and kept calling her sister Ruo Ruo. Fuyun Ruo responded with a smile and spoke softly to the children. Thank you, children, for taking care of Wen so well. Sister Ruo Ruo, are you and Wen still coming tomorrow? Little Shirtu asked reluctantly. Fu Yunrua looked at Wenwen's red face and said with a smile, "Come, we'll come when we're free." Only then did the children disperse in satisfaction. Wenwen had already climbed to the front seat of the small tram and held the front of the car with her small hands. Fu Yunrua pushed forward and asked with a smile, "What did Wenwen play with the children today?" Wenwen recounted the games they played today one by one. Then, she proudly raised her head and said proudly, "They're so childish. Actually, I don't like to play these games." Fu Yunrua couldn't help but laugh. Yes, Wenwen is so considerate. She patiently played with the children. Wenwen is so great. As they spoke, they arrived at the entrance of the May family's courtyard. "Come, let's go say goodbye to Grandma May." Only Aunt May was at home in the house. Fu Yunrua shouted from outside the courtyard. Aunt May, who was wearing an apron, came out of the kitchen. "Ruru, you're here." "Grandma." Wenwen jumped out of the car and looked inside. It seemed that Siyu and the others hadn't returned yet. "Aunt May, thank you for taking care of Wenwen." "Hey, it's not hard. I didn't watch much. The child went to play in the village." Aunt May waved her hand. "She just went to take a look from time to time." "Then I'll take Wenwen back to the flower garden first." Aunt May hurriedly said. "Aren't you going to eat first?" "No, it's done over there." Fu Yunrua still remembered that there were other people at Aunt May's house. Besides, it's not convenient for you. Aunt May thought about it and didn't insist. She only said that she must eat at home next time. Fu Yunrua agreed. After chatting for a while, Fu Yunrua left with Wenwen on the small tram. The car had just driven for about 10 meters when Siyu, Xi and Su, and the others walked over from the other side. Before they entered the courtyard, Xi and Su stretched his neck and sniffed hard. "Aunt May, what delicious food did you make? It smells so good." Aunt May was still at the entrance of the courtyard. When she heard this, she smiled and said, "I made braised pork trotters." "Wow." When Xi and Su heard this, he almost drooled. Siyu looked around the courtyard and didn't see that cheerful little figure running out. "Where's Wenwen?" "His mother brought him home," Aunt May said. Then she turned around and went back to the kitchen to continue cooking. Xi and Su followed beside her and kept saying sweet words, making Aunt May beam with joy. Siyu tilted his head and glanced outside. At this moment, the back of the tram that he had inadvertently caught a glimpse of was no longer on the path. Wenwen chattered along the way. He used his cheerful little voice to share the day's events with Fu Yunrua. He had too many things to tell his mother. His mouth only stopped for a moment when they were eating. After that, his little mouth was still chattering until he lay down on the bed and was about to go to sleep. He originally wanted to mention to his mother that he might be recorded in the live broadcast, but after thinking about it, he decided not to. He didn't want his mother to worry. If his mother found out, she would definitely go online to watch the show's replay. If she saw many netizens scolding him, wouldn't she be so angry that she cried? His mother might even ask the production team to delete or censor the video. Although his mother loved to share about him on the live broadcast platform, most of the time it was written or spoken. Occasionally, his recent photos would be censored to protect his privacy. Wenwen decided to skip this detail. In the end, he couldn't help but talk about his idol. "I saw Siyu." Fu Yunrua gently knocked his forehead. "You have no manners. You should call him uncle." Fu Yunrua originally wanted to say brother, but she suddenly remembered that if she remembered correctly, Siyu was a few years older than her. She remembered the name Siyu. It was probably because in the original novel, the female lead had faintly seduced him but failed. In the end, because the companies they belonged to opposed each other, their relationship became bad. Siyu could be said to be the mountain that pressed down on the heads of the male and female leads. He was also the only person who had never suffered in the hands of the male and female leads. If he hadn't suddenly retired and completely left the entertainment industry, the male and female leads wouldn't have become legends of their time. Of course, this was what Fu Yunrua concluded from the obscure descriptions in the novel. After all, it was a novel about the female lead. How could there be a detailed description of things that made the female lead suffer? Fu Yunrua thought that this was the configuration of a hidden big boss. But after sighing, she threw it to the back of her mind. After all, this had nothing to do with her. Wenwen touched his forehead. All right, it was Uncle Yu. He remembered that he hadn't said goodbye to Uncle Yu today. Chapter 31. Early the next morning, when Wan had to return to the village. If Fu-Yun couldn't leave because of the live broadcast, she could only ask Uncle Gua to send Wan to the Mei family. She looked at Win's back view as he left happily. She finally experienced the disappointment of a fully fledged child who no longer needed his mother. He used to be so clingy. The baby was only 4 years old. Did he no longer need her so soon? She was heartbroken. Wan didn't know about his mother's sadness and disappointment. After being sent to the Mei family's courtyard, he climbed out of the car and waved his chubby paws obediently. "Goodbye, Grandpa Gua." Then he turned around and ran into the courtyard with his short legs. Siyu was stretching in the courtyard while chatting casually with the cameraman's assistant. When he saw the little boy running over happily, he smiled. "Little boy, come here." Wen looked at the live broadcast camera that was on and carefully walked around the front. Then, she stood at the position closest to Siyu and raised her head to greet Siyu in a childish voice. "Good morning, Uncle Yu." He turned to look at the cameraman who didn't seem to have any presence. "Good morning, Uncle." "Good morning too, Wen." Siyu's voice unconsciously became gentler. "You're here so early. Did your mother send you here?" He heard the sound of the tram outside. Wen shook his head. "No, Grandpa sent me here. I'm going out for a walk. Do you want to come?" Wen said loudly, "Yes." The two of them left the courtyard and walked along the path towards the fields. The rice grains were heavy and some of them were already golden yellow. It was almost harvest season. Seeing this made people feel the joy of a harvest. Siyu walked slowly to take care of the child's short legs. However, Wen walked very quickly. For every step he took, he had to take 3 steps. Wen looked up for a while and felt his neck ache. From his perspective, Siyu was really tall. She was like a giant, taller than him when he grew up. He estimated that she was about 188 meters tall. He enviously looked at that pair of long and slender legs, then looked at his own short legs. He compared the huge gap between the two sides. He only reached a little above his knees. It would be great if he could grow to this height in the future. Just as he was thinking seriously, his line of sight suddenly rose higher and higher. Wen was stunned, and her small hand subconsciously supported the big hand that was holding him. What is Wen thinking about? After Siyu walked for a while, he realized that the little fellow who was hopping behind him had suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her eyes were staring blankly into space. Siyu thought that he was tired from walking, so he didn't want to make things difficult for his short legs. He turned around, bent down, picked him up, and placed him on his shoulder before continuing to walk. With a serious expression, Wen said, "I want to grow up quickly." He turned to look at Siyu and said admiringly, "I want to grow up to be as tall as you." Siyu encouraged him, "You can. As long as you eat well, you will definitely grow up to be as tall as me in the future." "I'm too short now," Wen sighed. Although he was confident, being shorter than his peers made him depressed. "You're still young. Uncle was this short when he was your age." Wen emphasized, "I'm 4 years old." He had already passed his 3rd birthday, so he was 4 years old. 4 years old? Was he that short when he was 4 years old? Siyu glanced at his short legs. Judging from his height, he was just like a 2-year-old child. However, he could speak so fluently, so he might really be 4 years old. Thus, he comforted him. Uncle was this tall when he was 4 years old. Upon hearing this, Wen was very happy. This meant that he had the opportunity to grow up to this height. Although Wen was not in the picture, he could not help but feel that Siyu would definitely be a good father in the future when he heard the childish conversation between the adult and the child. "Then I want to eat more vegetables." Wen made a great wish. Even his idol had said that he needed to eat more vegetables to grow taller. This meant that there must be a reason. He would not be picky about food anymore. "I want to grow up quickly." What's the point of growing up so quickly? It's so good to be a child. You can live a carefree life and only care about eating, drinking, and playing. Children were simple and happy. They did not need to think about anything and only cared about themselves. Although Siyu's childhood was relatively short, he had also lived a carefree life for a period of time. "I want to take care of my mother." Wen sighed like a little adult. "My mother is childish and naive. She's always foolishly trusting others. I have to protect her well. Otherwise, what if she gets cheated?" Siyu could not help but laugh. Such a young child seriously worrying about his mother was really heartwarming and amusing. What about your father? At the mention of this word, when one frowned, I don't need him. That man is very, very bad. He clenched his little fists. If I see him one day, I'll definitely teach him a lesson. Who asked him to bully his mother? Humph. Upon hearing this, Siyu thought that this child had not even met his own father. That was really too irresponsible. How could he bear to abandon such a cute child and abandon his wife and son? He was simply a scumbag. That's really too bad. Yeah. Wenwen nodded vigorously. After taking a walk, Siyu brought the child back to the Mei family's house. The Mei couple surrounded Wenwen and asked about his well-being. It was obvious that he was very doted on in the Mei family. After breakfast, Siyu and Xian Su went to do another task at the request of the production team. Wenwen was called by a group of children to play with him again. He was thinking about something and appeared to be a little absent-minded. Then, he could not help but ask his underlings, "Do you know who else is doing the show?" Wenwen's curiosity was piqued. Since there were A-list celebrities like Siyu who were doing the show, who else was there? Wenwen thought about the most popular celebrities of this era, but after so many years, he could not remember which seniors were there. The children looked at each other and did not know how to answer. At first, they had gone to watch the show for 2 days out of curiosity to see how the celebrities filmed the show. However, because their parents had repeatedly warned them not to get too close to strangers, they had not interacted much. The children did not chase after celebrities, so they could not even tell who the celebrities were. In their eyes, these so-called big celebrities were not even as attractive as Candy. At first, the family would discuss this at the dining table, but they only cared about eating and did not know what the adults were discussing. Seeing that they could not answer a single question, Wenwen was speechless. All right, he could not expect too much from the children. After all, in the children's world, other than eating, drinking, and playing, they could not see anything else. The adults' world was too complicated for the children to understand. However, one of the children could not bear to see Wenwen disappointed and could not help but say, "There's a vicious queen." Vicious queen? Yes, yes, yes. The children remembered and quickly said, "The vicious queen in Snow White. She asked us who was the prettiest. We said it was Sister Rorowo." One of the children suddenly thought of something. Will she kill Sister Rorowo like she killed Snow White? When the children heard this, they immediately panicked. In the story, the vicious queen heard the magic mirror say that Snow White was the prettiest, so she fed Snow White a poisonous apple. Their eyes were suddenly filled with tears, and they were extremely scared. When Wenwen heard the children's words, he was also very worried. He did not know which female celebrity they had unintentionally offended. If it was someone with a bad temper, she might hold a grudge. His mother was so stupid. If she unintentionally made an enemy, wouldn't she be bullied? However, he looked confident on the surface. He waved his small hand and comforted them. No, there's no vicious queen in reality. However, the children were still very uneasy. When one could only say, "Then we'll be dwarves. When the time comes, we'll just protect our mother well." When the children heard this, they were immediately happy and expressed that they would protect the princess well. Dian Dian said worriedly, "Wenwen, we don't want Sister Rorowo to eat the poisonous apple. You must look after Sister Rorowo and don't let her eat something given by strangers." Wenwen patted his chest and promised, "I will." Thus, the children continued to play with peace of mind. As Wenwen played, he felt that he had forgotten something. When he saw 2 strangers walk over, he remembered that he wanted to see the celebrities. Shangha Village and Shaha Village were adjacent. At this moment, they were playing in the area between the 2 villages. At this moment, Feng Shui Ruo, who was wearing a white dress, turned her head and spoke to the audience in the live broadcast room with a gentle expression on her face. "All right, I know you want to see Brother Yu. Aren't I taking you there now?" "No, we're just ordinary friends." When she saw the group of children playing, Feng Shui Ruo walked towards them with a kind smile on her face. She said gently, "Children, may I ask if the Mei family of Shangha Village is this way?" The children looked at her and then dispersed in a hubbub. "The vicious queen is here." When Feng Shui Ruo saw this situation, She was very helpless and even felt a little sad. She said to the camera, "Actually, I quite like children. I just don't know why they run away when they see me." She lowered her head slightly in disappointment, revealing her lovely side profile. The snowballs who were watching the live broadcast felt sorry for her and comforted her. They all scolded the countryside children for being so unlikable. It wasn't until the photographer's assistant reminded her that there was still a child who hadn't run away. Only then did Feng Shuerua look over. A cute little dumpling stood there foolishly, staring blankly at Feng Shuerua. When Feng Shuerua saw the child who had not run away, she was pleasantly surprised. She quickened her pace and walked over. She bent down and smiled gently. She reached out as if she wanted to touch his little face. Little boy. Feng Shuerua had seen the video clip of CU's live broadcast that night and knew that this was the child who had appeared on CU's live broadcast. She thought to herself, as expected, the children that CU likes are really adorable. When one saw Feng Shuerua, he was completely stunned. He never thought that he would see the old woman when she was young here. Feng Shuerua. That woman's mother was also an old woman who he hated to the core. She did not seem to have changed much after 20 years. She was just younger and had a different temperament. She did not seem to have aged. He would always remember the way she had looked at him then. She had looked down on him as if he was a rat in the gutter, full of disdain and disgust. From then on, Fu Wen had gone crazy and desperately tried to climb up the social ladder. He was still resentful of the way that woman had looked at him as if he was trash. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not shake her at all. That woman was a lady from a wealthy family. He was also born in a wealthy family. She also had a husband who had been in love with her for many years. She was also a legend in the entertainment industry. Later on, he found out that every time he showed signs of becoming famous, he was suppressed time and time again. He was also covered in black material that could not be washed away. It was all because of this old woman. He did not know why she would notice an insignificant person like him. She did not succumb to fate and eventually struggled to find a way out of the encirclement of evil. Later on, he met Chang Shui, a woman who had the same temperament as that old woman. They even looked similar. When she found out that she was the old woman's daughter, she hid in the dark and tirelessly caused trouble for her, just like how he had once been framed. However, there was a difference in the end. He had no background and could only be trampled on. The other party had a strong background. She had the Feng family and the Chang family as her backers. She also had pursuers with strong backgrounds to protect her. In the end, he was still defeated. However, this woman was smiling at him gently and affectionately. She even reached out her hand to touch his face. When one only felt endless evil sweeping towards him. The soft touch on his cheek made his hair stand on end and his mind tense up. He subconsciously tilted his head and fiercely bit her hand. Feng Shui looked at the child in front of her. She could only see him more clearly when she got closer. His facial features gave her a sense of déjà vu. It was so familiar that she could not help but feel evil. She was thinking when she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her finger. She cried out in pain and subconsciously pushed the child away. Fu Wen was pushed back a few steps and fell hard on the ground. Wen. After the children ran away, they realized that Wen did not run with them. They could not leave Wen alone to face the evil empress and run back. Then, they saw the evil empress push Wen to the ground. "You dare to hit Wen." De Li and Dashin clenched their small fists and rushed up angrily. "I'll beat you to death." The photographer's assistant saw that the situation was not right and hurriedly went up to stop them. Don't hit. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding." The children did not care about any misunderstanding. They only saw that their Wen was being bullied. They waved their small fists angrily and started punching and kicking. The photographer did not dare to fight back. He could only stop them. It was already very difficult for him to stop two half-grown children. He even took a few punches on his body. He could not stop the other 7 or 8-year-old children who rushed up. Hit you. Xiao Shan, who was not even 4 years old, also rushed up and hit Feng Shui with his head. If Feng Shui tried to dodge, she was also hit many times. Dian and some other little children surrounded Wen. They raised their heads and closed their eyes as they cried loudly. The scene was very chaotic. Wen, who was sitting on the ground, was stunned when she saw the situation. Siyu and the others who rushed over saw this scene. A group of older children were wailing and attacking two adults. Another group of little children sat on the ground and cried loudly. Xiao Tuanzi, who was surrounded in the middle, was confused. Not only did the program crew and celebrities who were doing missions nearby rush over when they saw that the situation was not right, but even the villagers who heard the crying came over. Siyu strode forward and immediately carried Wen. The men in black from the program crew quickly carried the children away. Dashin and the others kicked and bit as they struggled. What's wrong with you guys? It's fine if you're filming a show, but why are you bullying the children? When the villagers saw that their children were in conflict with the program crew and that the adults were shamelessly carrying the children away, they disregarded the consequences and defended their children. They looked at this group of outsiders with vigilance and dissatisfaction. If it weren't for the fact that they only separated the children and didn't touch a single finger, they would have gone up and beaten them up first. When the children saw that the adults had arrived, they became more confident. They quickly struggled to get off the ground and swarmed to the adults to complain. Second uncle, they're bullying Wen. They're hitting Wen. Grandpa, they're hitting people. The program crew and the local villagers were in a confrontation. The director's assistant asked with a bitter face if they should turn off the live broadcast. After this incident, the live broadcast was in an uproar and several hot searches on Weibo instantly exploded. The director weighed the pros and cons and immediately decided to continue the broadcast. Originally, due to the lack of conflict in the program, the traffic had not exploded. Although the program could be canceled if it was not handled well, it was still an opportunity. Director Peng smiled apologetically. Fellow villagers, don't misunderstand. We don't mean any harm to the children. However, the villagers were still dissatisfied. Even a fool knew that adults shouldn't bully children. The children glared at them with hostility. Big Mountain said loudly, "She hit Wen. We saw it with our own eyes." Everyone's gaze shifted to Feng Shui. Feng Shui was in a very sorry state. Her snow-white dress was stained with countless dirty marks. Her hair was messy, and her small face was pale and weak. She was on the verge of tears and weakly and pitifully explained, "I didn't hit him. I just accidentally pushed him a little." Her fair fingers inadvertently revealed a circle of teeth marks. It was very obvious. In order to protect Feng Shuiwa, the photographer, who was in an even more sorry state, explained, "That child bit Miss Feng, so Miss Feng accidentally pushed him." Wang Huaibei saw the obvious wound on her finger and couldn't help but condemn her. Children shouldn't bite people randomly. The villagers were even more dissatisfied. Second uncle said, "We've taken care of Wen since he was born. He's been obedient and sensible since he was young. He also takes good care of the children. What did you do to Wen to make him bite you?" Feng Shui became even more delicate. Her bright eyes were filled with tears, and people couldn't help but feel their hearts soften. She said softly, "I only touched his face. I'm sorry. I didn't know that children don't like other people touching them. I'll be more careful in the future." When Feng Shui showed her attitude, Snowball's hearts ached and they angrily flooded the screen. "If I was bitten by a naughty child, I wouldn't just push him away. I'd ask him to give me 2 slaps. How do you teach children? This child is so annoying. Disgusting. Shue doesn't care about her status and wants to get close to you. It's your honor, okay? You don't know what's good for you." That's right. How can a country bumpkin get so close to Shue unless they're lucky? I feel sorry for Shue. Her fingers are connected to her heart. She bit him so hard. This naughty child deserves a beating. What era is it now? People are still divided into different classes? If Shue wants to get close to someone, does that person have no choice but to kneel down and accept her kindness? It's right for a child to be vigilant, okay? Scolding a child like this, has your conscience been eaten by dogs? There were also people who couldn't stand it and started arguing with Feng Shui's fans. Nonsense. We pinched Wen's face, but he didn't bite us. Big sister, you don't even know our Wen. Without an adult accompanying you, a stranger like you came to get close to a child. If he didn't bite you, who else would he bite? Big. Big sister? Feng Shui's face almost fell. Being called Big Sister by an auntie who was several rounds older than her made her extremely uncomfortable. That's right. Grandpa, Grandma, Dad, and Mom all said that we can't talk to strangers casually. We can't let strangers get close to us. Otherwise, if we get carried away, we won't be able to go home. Dali said righteously. I knew it. This woman has a pointy mouth and monkey cheeks. One look, and you can tell that she's not a kind person. She even dares to bully a child. Pointy mouth and monkey cheeks? Feng Shui's face contorted for a moment. Her most outstanding feature was her small oval face. She looked delicate, cute, and lovely. Miss Feng, that was a very gentle push. Siyu's gaze was deep as she looked at her coldly. After Siyu carried Wenwen up, the first thing she did was to check his entire body. Then, she saw that his fair and chubby palms were bruised. The wounds on his two small palms under the camera's lens were shocking. Only then did Wenwen feel a burning pain in his palms. Perhaps it was because he had subconsciously used his hands to support himself when he fell and accidentally scraped them. His skin was very tender, and it broke open with just a slight scratch. Traces of blood seeped out, and there were even some bruises. It was a scary sight. Wenwen hadn't suffered such a big grievance in a long time. After being spoiled for 2 to 3 years, he couldn't suppress his emotions and tears welled up in his eyes. When he saw Feng Shui's weak and innocent posture, Fu Wen's heart was filled with hatred. It was as if Chang Shuai was putting on an act in front of him. It was like this every time. Regardless of whether he had bullied her or not, she would always act pitifully and innocently. This caused the netizens to attack him indiscriminately. Indeed, like mother like daughter. He could imagine the netizens' malicious words at this moment, when one was afraid that others would see the twisted hatred in his heart. He lay in Siyu's arms and curled up into a small ball. His small body trembled from time to time, as if he was afraid. However, after hearing his idol's words, he suddenly didn't hate her anymore. He was now a child who was loved by someone. He looked up and raised his two small hands. Feeling wronged, he whined, "It hurts." Siyu blew on it for a while. "It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt." "Brother Yu?" Feng Shui couldn't believe it. They were from the same program, so shouldn't they be on the same side? Unfortunately, she was thinking too much. Siyu's thin lips curled into a mocking smile. "Miss Feng, one must know their place. You know that children don't like you, yet you still deliberately approach them. It's hard not to suspect your intentions." He was implying something. It's said that children are the best at distinguishing between kindness and evil. "Miss Feng, since you're so unpopular, shouldn't you reflect on yourself?" Siyu's words were directly pointing at her. She clearly hated children, yet she pretended to be kind and approached them. She had scared the children and caused them to be bitten and beaten. Wasn't that what she deserved? That wasn't all. When Siyu found out that when one had bitten someone, he asked his cameraman for a piece of tissue and carefully wiped his mouth. He even warned him, "You have to know that diseases come from the mouth. Don't bite anything carelessly. What if you get a stomachache?" Feng Shui's face was really pale. She was on the verge of collapse from Siyu's words. The others didn't dare to say anything. Even if they wanted to please Feng Shui, they couldn't afford to offend Siyu. Director Peng couldn't stop wiping his sweat. He thought that Best Actor C's mouth was really vicious. He suddenly regretted not turning off the live stream. Compared to Feng Shui's live stream that was filled with hostility, Siyu's fans were much more rational. Their tone was full of ridicule. "I wanted to say it just now. Zai Zai is such a cute child. There must be a reason for her to bite someone. Only Feng Shuerua would be able to push the blame onto a child. Brother Yu is right. Zai Zai let Brother Yu hug her the first time she saw him. She even took the initiative to hug his thigh. Don't you know that Zai Zai doesn't like you? How dare you insult a 3 or 4-year-old child? Feng Shui's fans are only of this quality. Are you bullying Zai Zai because she doesn't have any fans? If anyone dares to insult her again, I'll cut off their heads." When the villagers saw that there were reasonable people in the production team, their attitudes became much more amiable. However, they still looked at Feng Shui with an extremely unwelcoming gaze. When one is such a likable child, who in our village doesn't know that? She bullied our children. If you don't give us an explanation, we won't let this matter rest. Exactly. Do you think we're easy to bully? More and more villagers rushed over and surrounded the production team. Director Pong was sweating profusely as he tried his best to lower his voice. Siyu looked on coldly. When he saw that the production team had been scolded enough, he stood up and continued, "This is Miss Fong's fault. The production team has also failed in their duties. How about this? Let Miss Fong apologize to the children. The production team will also compensate. What do you think?" When the villagers saw that Siyu was on their side and Wenwen was so close to him, they were willing to give him face. Under pressure from Siyu and the production team, Feng Shui tearfully apologized. The children first looked at Wenwen without saying a word. Wenwen turned his head and stole a glance at Feng Shui. His little face was timid as he looked at Feng Shui with obvious fear in his eyes. He said in a trembling voice, "I forgive you. You didn't mean to push me. I lost my balance." After he spoke, he hurriedly buried his face in Siyu's arms. The children also reluctantly expressed their forgiveness. Feng Shui was taken away by the production team. When she returned to her room alone, her face instantly contorted and she fiercely clenched her fists. "Siyu." At this moment, her phone rang. She picked it up and paused for a moment before answering the call. She sounded aggrieved and dejected. "Brother Chong?" Chapter 32. Siyu carried the child to the clinic and prepared to treat the wound on his palm. Although it was only a flesh wound and would heal after a few days of rest, it still made his heart ache. Wenwen sat on the bench obediently like a soft ball. Siyu held his two small wrists and did not allow him to move. He watched as the doctor cleaned his wound with disinfectant. Wenwen stretched out his hands and felt a sharp pain. He could not help but tear up. He opened his mouth and hissed silently. His 2 feet were dangling in the air. Siyu could not help but feel a tingling pain in his heart. This unprecedented feeling made him frown unconsciously. Wenwen saw Siyu's face darken and thought that he was too delicate. He quickly held back his tears and looked at him carefully. He said softly, "I'm not crying." Siyu looked at the child's careful expression and his face softened. "Yes, the baby is great." When Wen's face lit up. Yes, he was great. Other children cried when they fell, but he did not cry. Aunt May heard the news and rushed to the clinic. When she saw his 2 little hands wrapped up like buns, her heart ached. She thought that she would be back soon after going to the fields to work. She did not expect to hear someone come to her and tell her that Wenwen had been bullied. She rushed over, but the crowd had already dispersed. When she heard that Wenwen was at the clinic, she hurried over. Siyu comforted her and explained the situation objectively. Aunt May had a bad impression of that female celebrity and scolded her for a while. Then she hugged Wenwen and was about to cry. "Wenwen, where do you feel pain? Tell Grandma." Wenwen shook his head. "No, I don't." Siyu remembered that when he went over, Wenwen was sitting on the ground. He wondered if his little but was injured. Hence, he carried Wenwen and placed him on his lap. Then he pulled down his pants and revealed his chubby butt. Siyu observed for a while. "There's a bruise." The bruise was very obvious on his white and tender butt. Aunt May also went over to take a look. Her heart ached. Wenwen was suddenly carried over. Before he could react, he felt a chill on his butt. The 2 adults stared at his butt and waved for the doctor to apply medicine. His little face instantly turned red, and it even spread to his neck. It was too shameful. Wenwen couldn't hold it in any longer and burst into tears. Siyu suddenly heard a loud cry. He was stunned and thought that the wound on his butt. He quickly rubbed it. Huh, it felt good? He could not help but pinch it lightly. It was slippery. Wenwen's cries paused, and then she cried even louder. He was too ashamed to face anyone. Aunt May understood Wenwen's self-esteem better. She quickly carried Wenwen and helped him pull up his pants. "Don't cry, don't cry. Grandma won't look anymore." Wenwen cried sadly on Aunt May's shoulder. He did not want to care about Siyu anymore. He was too bad. Siyu finally understood why he was crying. He touched his nose and thought that this little guy had quite a strong self-esteem. Aunt May carried Wenwen home. Siyu followed beside her and glanced at her from time to time. The little guy finally stopped crying, but he was still sobbing. Aunt May placed him in the living room. After comforting him, she went to the kitchen to cook. After this incident, the whole morning passed. Aunt May thought that when one had suffered greatly and hurriedly made delicious food for him, Siyu saw that the little guy's cheeks were red from crying. His small nose and big eyes were also red. Hence, he spoke to him gently. He did not expect the little guy to be so angry. He turned his body and faced him with the back of his head. He said he would ignore him. Siyu was speechless. He did not know how to coax a child. He had never done that before. He did not have any toys with him. After thinking for a while, Siyu turned around and went upstairs. Wenwen pricked up his ears to listen for movements behind him. When he heard footsteps leaving, he secretly turned his head to look. However, he did not see anyone. He was even angrier. He did not know how to coax him. He decided to cut ties with Siyu. He would not be his friend in the future. He would not be his idol. When Siyu went downstairs, he saw the back of a little boy who was as angry as a blowfish. He walked over and squatted down beside Wenwen. Wenwen turned his body, but he could not help but secretly look at him. He looked as if he wanted to coax him. Siyu smiled in his heart and coaxed. I was wrong just now. Wenwen is a little adult. I shouldn't have taken off your pants and treated you to candy. Forgive me. Okay? Siyu had bought a bag of candy to bribe the children in the village. He still had some left in the room. Now, he was using it to coax the child. Wenwen was even angrier when he saw the candy. He complained. You gave candy to Zhuang Zhuang and the others, but not to me. Zhuang Zhuang and the others had already told him that he had given candy to all the children, but not to him. Siyu was speechless. For the first time in his life, he felt a headache coming on. Were children so difficult to coax? It's my fault. I shouldn't have forgotten about Wenwen. Only God knew that he did not know that there was such a child. Wenwen snorted loudly. I'm angry. His little paw struggled to take the candy from Siyu's hand. He wanted to have what the other children had. Siyu cooperated and put the candy on his paw, which was wrapped like a small bun. However, the little boy put the candy in his pants pocket and did not look at Siyu kindly. Siyu was speechless. After half a day, Aunt May came out of the kitchen. She had steamed a fragrant meat pie, an egg custard, and filled Wenwen's personal bowl with a bowl of soft and fragrant rice. Wenwen sniffed with his little nose. It smelled so good. His eyes immediately lit up. Wenwen's hands were injured and could not hold a spoon. Siyu volunteered to feed him. Wenwen looked at him. He did not want Siyu to feed him. This was his dignity as a man. He said stubbornly, I'm not hungry. However, he stared at the steaming meat pie and egg and unconsciously swallowed his saliva. He looked like he wanted to eat it. Are you really not hungry? Siyu scooped up a small piece of meat with a spoon and mixed it with the rice. I'm not hungry, Wenwen said reservedly. However, his round tummy did not give him any face and started growling. Siyu glanced sideways at his rumbling tummy. Wenwen held his tummy and tried to salvage his dignity. I'm actually not hungry, but my tummy has its own ideas. Siyu almost could not hold back his laughter. He asked seriously, what does your tummy think? Wenwen rolled his eyes. It says it wants to try it and see how it tastes. Siyu held back his laughter. He scooped up a spoonful of meat and egg rice and blew on it before bringing it to his mouth. Okay, let your tummy have a taste. The strong fragrance of the meat wafted into his nose. He could not hold back and leaned over to take a bite. Siyu suddenly thought of something and moved the spoon away. Wenwen's mouth moved along with it. His small body almost lost its balance, but Siyu caught him with one hand. Wenwen was speechless. He looked up at Siyu with accusation in his eyes. How could he be so bad? Siyu remembered that the little guy had bitten someone and had not rinsed his mouth. He could not wipe it clean with a tissue. Therefore, he put down the spoon and picked up the little guy with one hand. Rinse your mouth first before you eat. Wenwen swung his short limbs in the air and went to rinse his mouth first. Aunt May smiled at this heartwarming scene. Then, she returned to the kitchen to continue cooking. As she was cutting vegetables, she suddenly slapped her forehead. Oh no, I forgot to inform Ruoro about Wenwen's injury. Aunt May quickly took out her phone and called Ruoro. In the living room, Wenwen sat back on the stool and finally ate the meat patty. His small mouth squirmed and his eyes narrowed unconsciously. It was so good, little belly. How does it taste? Wenwen looked at Siyu. After confirming that he was not laughing at him, he said reservedly, Little belly says it's okay. Do you want to try it again? Yes. Fu Yun received a call from the song Immerse after the live broadcast. The MV they worked on was going to be released tonight, and she specially called to inform her. Fu Yun said that she would forward it and support it. After the two sides exchanged pleasantries, the studio called. Tian was very efficient. Her studio was already up and running. She asked when she, the boss, would be able to meet the other employees. Fu Yun said that she would arrange the time. Panda streaming platform was in the capital. Her studio was also in the capital. However, because it was inconvenient for her to leave, the studio was temporarily managed by Tian. The two talked about work for a while before hanging up. She saw that it was almost noon, so she prepared to cook. Until she finished eating, Fu Yun was still thinking about Wenwen, this little rascal. He played so much that he forgot about her, his mother. Just as she finished washing the dishes, Fu Yun received a call from Aunt May. She smiled and thought that her baby was still thinking about her. After Fu Yun picked up the call, she heard Aunt May's voice and called out sweetly, Aunt May? However, after hearing Aunt May's words, her smile froze on her lips. Then, she tried her best to remain calm and said to Uncle Gua, Uncle Gua, I'm going back to the village. What's wrong? Uncle Gua walked out. Nothing. I'm just going to take a look. Fu Yun did not want Uncle Gua to worry. After saying goodbye, she pushed the trolley and left in a hurry. Siyu was feeding the child spoonful by spoonful. He was addicted to feeding. He felt that the child would open his cute little mouth immediately after eating a mouthful and crying for food. It was really interesting. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside. Wenwen's eyes lit up, and he quickly jumped up and ran out. It's Mommy. Halfway through, Wenwen ran back and looked at the camera assistant and live broadcast equipment in the corner. He instructed, Don't film Mommy. It was only when the assistant said that the camera was turned off that Wenwen turned around and ran out in relief. He thought that it was enough for him to bear the malicious comments on the internet alone. If his mother was also on camera, she would definitely be scolded even more. He did not allow others to scold his mother. Siyu looked at Wenwen's little back view as he jumped out happily. He thought that he was really heartless. He treated him so well and even fed him. In the end, when his mother came, he abandoned him. Siyu looked at the last piece of meat in the bowl and decided not to give it to him. Siyu scooped it up and put it into his mouth. At this moment, Wenwen and his mother came in. Siyu inadvertently looked up and met a pair of familiar eyes. With a clatter, the spoon in his mouth fell out. Wenwen pattered forward. When she saw that his bowl was empty, she immediately complained, You secretly ate my meat. Her idol was actually such a person. He secretly ate his own meat. Siyu covered up his momentary loss of composure and said to Wenwen in a serious manner, Didn't you say that you didn't want to eat anymore? I'm following the principle of not wasting food and helping you solve it. After a pause, Siyu said, I don't mind your saliva. Humph. Wenwen snorted like a little piglet. I'm the one who dislikes you. His meat. There was only a small bite left, but it had been eaten by Siyu. Wenwen could not help but run over to Fu Yun to complain. Mommy, look at how he's bullying me. Fu Yun could not help but chuckle. Looking at her baby's energetic state, she felt much less worried. She looked up at the man sitting down and thanked him sincerely. Thank you for helping to take care of Wenwen. You're welcome. Fu Yun saw this legendary celebrity and thought of how he had just stolen, helped Wenwen eat the meat, and her impression of him improved. How could she not understand her own son? Her son was very close to this person, so he did not take his so-called bullying to heart. She looked at him curiously and thought that he was indeed the person who made the male and female protagonists helpless. He was indeed handsome and had an extraordinary aura. However, when she thought of the first time she saw him being caught and eaten, she instantly felt that he was very close to her. She thought that Siyu's loss of composure was because he had been caught red-handed. She considerately pretended not to see it. She thought to herself that she never expected the legendary Siyu to have such a personality. However, she did not have time to think further. Her attention was all on Wenwen. When she heard that Wen was injured, she did not care about her safety. She drove the electric car as fast as she could and arrived at the Mei family's house in 10 minutes. When she walked into the courtyard, she saw Wen running out of the house before she even entered the house. The temperature in the courtyard was higher, so Fu Yun brought the child into the house first. Wen stuck to Fu Yun's side and stretched out her two small hands for Fu Yun to see. "Mommy, it hurts." Fu Yun looked at her tightly bandaged hands with a distressed expression and said, "Mommy will blow on them for you. It won't hurt anymore." She wanted to see how Wen's hands were injured, but it was so well bandaged that she could not take them off to see. Siyu looked at Wen, who was acting coquettishly beside his mother, and there was an inexplicable look in his eyes. Siyu said casually, "His butt is injured." When Fu Yun heard this, she hurriedly carried Wen up and placed him on her lap. She wanted to pull down his pants to take a look. Wen blushed, but he did not struggle and cooperated with her to take a look. After so many years, Wen was already used to it. Anyway, in his mother's eyes, what had he not seen before? If he did not show it to his mother, she would be so sad that she would cry. Since she would compromise in the end, he might as well lie down. Fu Yun looked at his white and tender buttocks. Fortunately, there was only a bruise and it would disappear in a few days. He didn't cry? Siyu clicked her tongue. She was unhappy that the little guy was so picky. At this moment, Aunt Mei walked into the house. "Ruoro, you're here." She looked at Fu Yun embarrassedly. "I'm sorry, Ruoro. I didn't take good care of Wen and caused him to get injured." "It's okay, Aunt Mei. It's normal for children to stumble." Fu Yun saw that the baby only had a superficial injury and felt relieved. She began to ask about the incident. "Aunt Mei, what's going on?" She did not explain clearly over the phone. She only said that Wen had been pushed by someone. She was confused. Did he have a conflict with the children when he was playing? Fu Yun thought about it and felt that it was unlikely. She knew how popular her son was among the children. No children would bully him. Aunt Mei hurriedly told Fu Yun the news she heard. When Fu Yun heard that it was a conflict with the production team, her expression turned ugly. An adult bullying a child? Who would do such a thing? "Who was it?" Fu Yun asked. She was not by her son's side when he was bullied. She did not protect her son in time. Fu Yun felt very upset. If it wasn't for the fact that the production crew had already apologized and they had already gotten justice, Fu Yun Ruo would have really gone to their door to ask for an explanation. Fong, what was it again? Aunt Mei did not remember. Siyu reminded her. Fong Shui Ruo. Then, she looked at her reaction. Sure enough, Fu Yun's expression changed when she heard this name. She did not expect that Fong Shui Ruo would actually participate in such a variety show that would cause her to suffer. She even came to see her. She had been hiding for so many years. Was her peaceful days going to be over? She did not want to face the male and female leads and the original family. It was too upsetting. Fu Yun Ruo was living comfortably here. She really did not want to live a bad life. To her, the existence of the male and female leads and the original family made her feel bad. At this moment, Aunt Mei remembered to make the introductions. This is Yun Ruo, Wen's mother. Then, she looked at Fu Yun Ruo. Ruo, this is the famous celebrity Siyu. Do you know him? Fu Yun Ruo put aside her thoughts and looked at Siyu. Seeing that he was also looking at her, she smiled at him in a friendly manner. I know him. I've seen your movie. It's very good. Thank you. Siyu had been silently observing this woman. She was polite to him and completely treated him as a stranger. Did she not remember him? Or did she not recognize him? Fu Yun Ruo did not chat with Aunt Mei for long. Wen, who was lying in her arms, was already drowsy. He had eaten a little late for lunch. Usually, he would have digested his food and taken a nap at this time. She picked up Wen and was about to leave after informing Aunt Mei. Siyu, who had not spoken much, said lightly, "Let the child sleep here?" Fu Yun Ruo looked over with her starry eyes. She was a little surprised that he would take the initiative to speak. After all, they were just strangers. She said politely, "There's no need. My house is not far away. We can go back directly." When Siyu heard that the child did not need to leave on the scooter, he did not say anything and just nodded. Siyu watched as Fu Yunruo carried the child and disappeared at the entrance of the courtyard. In the end, he did not call out to her. He wandered and found Aunt May. He pretended to be casual. Aunt May, Won is 4 years old, right? When is her birthday? He paused and added, the little guy suffered today. Should we celebrate his birthday to get rid of the bad luck? Won is born on the 27th of February in the Gregorian calendar. She will be 3 years old this year, Aunt May said. Siyu tapped his knuckles. Oh, that's a pity. Then, he praised Aunt May. No wonder Won is so cute. She has an outstanding mother. This place is full of outstanding people. Only a place like this can raise such a talented person. Aunt May smiled like a flower as if she had been praised. She said with pride, isn't that so? Our Ruo is much prettier than those female celebrities. Indeed, Siyu agreed. In Aunt May's opinion, Siyu was a person who had seen the world. If he was full of praise for Ruo, it meant that this girl was really outstanding. She was even happier. However, Ruo is not considered one of us. She must have been a city girl in the past. I don't know how she came to our place and stayed here. This girl is kind-hearted and has a good personality. Everyone in our village likes her. Aunt May continued to praise her. After saying a lot, Aunt May suddenly remembered something. Look at me. I keep talking to you. Go and rest. Otherwise, you won't be energetic in the afternoon. It's my honor to listen to Aunt May. Siyu's attitude was friendly, but he did have the habit of taking afternoon naps. Therefore, he did not refuse. Then I'll go upstairs first. Siyu went upstairs to his room. However, he was not sleepy at all. He received too much information at once. If he had not been trained to control his emotions and not reveal them easily, he would have lost his composure. Yunruo? Fu Yunruo. The timing matched as well. She didn't even need to think with her toes to know that she had a son without his knowledge. Perhaps he was close to that child not only because of his natural fondness for cute children, but also because of his father-son nature. Siyu held his forehead. So, Won was actually his son? He had a son? At this moment, his phone rang. Siyu took it and saw that it was a call from his agent. After he answered the call, his agent said helplessly, I told you to pay attention to your image. Can't you wait until the live broadcast is over? Yuan Xian knew that Feng Shuirua was unhappy because he had appeared in front of Siyu on the show. However, he did not dare to ask for too much. He only hoped that he would maintain his image during the live broadcast and did not care about him in private. However, he had rudely insulted Feng Shuirua in front of millions of viewers during the live broadcast. This had caused an uproar online, and the company had a hard time dealing with public relations. Siyu was indifferent. After his agent finished complaining, he said, send me the information you found on Fu Yunruo. When Yuan Xian heard this name, he was surprised for a moment and almost did not remember who it was. Fortunately, he had some recollection. He responded first and then asked curiously, why did you suddenly think of her? Siyu did not explain the reason. He only urged him to send the information over and then hung up. Not long after, he received a scanned document on his phone. Siyu browsed through the information on his phone for a while. It was all information from before she disappeared. Siyu still remembered that he had erased all traces of her. So she ended up here? What happened after that? What did she go through here? How did Won come into this world? How did she grow up? Siyu looked at Fu Yunruo's photo. She always used bright makeup to disguise her fragility. Her eyes were filled with hostility, and she looked like a hedgehog with spikes all over her body in an attempt to protect herself. The person in the photo and the person in the photo were two extremes. Her aura was peaceful and her face was clean, but not dull at all. It was as if she had natural makeup on and was dazzlingly beautiful. The person in the photo and the person in the photo looked like two different people. If Siyu hadn't seen her eyes, he wouldn't have known that he had such a deep impression of her. It was so deep that he remembered her with just one look. If the information wasn't real, he wouldn't have recognized her that night. She was the same person who had been full of aggression in the information. What bothered him a little was that he had recognized her, but she didn't recognize him. Shouldn't it be easier to recognize him? Fu Yunruo. Siyu muttered to himself for a moment and dialed a number. The call was immediately connected, and a respectful voice was heard. Boss, see you said calmly, investigate a person. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.